It's time to take another quick look at Wednesday's front pages. We have the Daily Mail. When will someone get a grip on the eco-fanatics? We have the Daily Telegraph. The NHS is broken, declares Starmer. The Guardian. Energy firms face curbs on forced meter installations. The Mirror. Killer knives. 5 Tory promises, but still kids die. The Daily Express. You're paying price of rise in fat cat salaries. The Star, not today, thank you, chatbots. Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Josh Howie and Roger Monkhouse. Tune in the same time tomorrow when Leo Kearse will be in this chair and he'll be joined by Steve Allen and Lewis Schaefer. And remember, if you are watching the 5 a.m. repeat, stay tuned for The Breakfast Show just after the break. Thank you and good night.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know, Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have. No one will be cancelled. Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Prime Minister voiced tougher laws to stop protesters ruining sporting events as eco-activists prepare to disrupt the London Marathon.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 19th of April. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Leading the news on this Wednesday morning, Rishi Sunak says the behaviour of protesters who disrupt sporting events is selfish and reckless as he pledges to push ahead with legislation to crack down on public order offences.
It comes as environmental groups, including Extinction Rebellion, prepare to flood the capital with 30,000 environmental activists during the London Marathon this weekend.
Scottish First Ministers facing a growing SNP rebellion over his decision not to suspend Nicola Sturgeon. It comes after the arrest of party treasurer Colin Beattie yesterday as part of a probe into party finances.
Latest inflation figures are due in an hour. Forecasts are optimistic. The figure could drop below 10% due to falling energy prices. This comes after figures yesterday saw wage growth continue to lag behind inflation.
And fragments said to be that of the cross that Jesus was crucified on will be used as part of the Coronation procession. The relics will be set in a newly made Cross of Wales and were gifted to the King by Pope Francis. So your views, what should you do with the eco-warriors? Support them or lock them up? Get in touch the usual way. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Let us know where you're watching from as well.
So it is our top story this morning. Rishi Sunak says the behaviour of protesters who disrupt sporting events is selfish and reckless, and he pledges to push ahead with legislation to crack down on public order offences.
Now, all of this comes as environmental groups, including Extinction Rebellion, prepare to flood the capital, London, with 30,000 environmental activists during the marathon, which is on this weekend.
Well, joining us with his take is the political analyst Leon Emirali. Good morning to you, Leon.
Morning.
Look, lots of talk about this public order bill. This is very much another one of Rishi Sunak's babies. How would that change things as we're just recovering from the World Snooker disruption, the Grand National disruption, and now talk of the London Marathon?
Well, the reality is it isn't going to change much, is it? Because if you are hell-bent on disrupting one of these events and getting your point across in a protest, you're going to do it. But what the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary will be hoping that these new crackdowns do is essentially act as a deterrent, that actually, you know, the cost of disrupting these types of events is going to be more than it is currently. But I don't think we're actually going to see a huge difference because these protesters clearly have a point to make and they're going to do it at all costs.
And this is a difficult one to police, really. You know, a massive, massive event over geographically a large area, 26.2 miles, and 30,000 protesters, they reckon.
It's a huge number, isn't it? And I just think I feel sorry for the people that have been training, you know, gruelling, slogging away for charity on the most part. And these people are going to have their day potentially disrupted. And it's another thing to think about as they're running their 26.2 miles. So I just think
what will happen this time? You say another thing to think about. The police, whatever, won't use batons on them. They won't use excessive force on them. But I think runners may. I think if you get in the way of someone's training, which has gone on for a whole year, you're just going to get a sock in the mouth, really.
Yeah, and it just sows that social disharmony that we could really do without. And we don't want to go down the route of America with heavy-handed policing. I think that's quite clear. But what we do need is there to be a clear deterrent that if you do muck up these events, if you do disrupt people's enjoyment or people's training, there has to be consequences. And as you say, Eamonn, it might not be the police that are the ones regulating that or policing that, but it may well be those who are on the receiving end.
Because we have a proud tradition of peaceful protest and, you know, everyone wants to protect that. But this is the sort of shift, isn't it, away from those peaceful protests, marching, whatever it might be, waving placards, to disrupting events where people have spent money, people have trained, people are in their downtime. You can't escape politics wherever you go today. But as you say, very difficult for the police to police, not least because they were accused of being heavy-handed in the wake of the Sarah Everard vigil, for example. Trying to find that balance is a very difficult path to walk.
And let's not forget the backdrop here. The police are under scrutiny for their own actions on multiple fronts. So I think we're in a difficult situation where we're giving the police more powers ultimately, but the police have their own issues with how they use those powers. So it's a very tricky balancing act. But this is important from a political standpoint. I think the public do care about having these protesters seem to be running riot across the country. And I think if Rishi Sunak can get a hold on this, and it does potentially give him a boost at the ballot box, but it isn't an easy one to solve by any means.
And do you think it's what the public want to see?
I think it is, Eamonn. I think even if you have sympathy for the climate cause, and I think most people understand that it is an issue, but it's the way in which these protesters are going about it. It's disrupting people on their way to work. It's disrupting people as they go to see sporting events, as they partake in their hobbies. And as Isabel says, trying to get some respite from the trials and tribulations of daily life. And yet we are still having that political message.
So we want to know from you, if you were taking part in the marathon or an event and some protester got in the way, disrupted your attempt at a time or at a record, or interrupted your whole year's training, would you how would you react? How would you react to that? How would you take it? And would you sock somebody in the mouth?
Do you know, there's lots of high-profile runners on Sunday, including the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt. So there's, you know, all sorts of security issues
you could disrupt him. That would be... Well, people find that very funny, wouldn't they?
Well, he's raising money for an NHS hospital, I believe. But I just want to ask you, before we let you go, Leon, one more point about the situation in Scotland, the kind of implosion, if you like, of the SNP. I mean, it really does look, from where we're sitting anyway, as if it's sort of the end of the nationalist dream at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, let's not rule it out entirely, but it does seem as though this has to be one of the trickiest periods of the SNP's history. And although it's happening in Scotland, this has big implications for Westminster. And if the SNP are eradicated, as it may look, or certainly their position in Scotland falls, there is a vacuum for Labour or the Conservatives to sweep up those nearly 60 parliamentary seats in Scotland, and that could have a big sway on who is the next occupant of number 10. So the ramifications of this are massive, and I don't think we're at the end of these police investigations and these various different allegations swirling around, and I think that what's going on in Scotland right now is going to make one hell of a Netflix drama over the next few years.
Say that again.
And if you, you know, are an SNP voter and you have put somebody in power, would you change your vote? Have you drifted from the SNP? We'd like to know that. We're also going to like to know the inflation figures in about an hour's time. Food costs continue to rise. Analysts are blaming the prices for last month's surprise inflation increase where they rocketed. There's no sign, except for, you're saying, fuel may be coming down.
Fuel looks like it's coming down.
Food is absolutely through the roof.
The forecasts are all looking very positive. I just want to get Leon's take before we say goodbye to you. You know, lots of predictions it will fall out of double figures for the first time since August last year. Do you buy that?
Yeah, I think it seems to be that we are going to have some good news on inflation this morning, and that's about time, because clearly there's been a great deal of worry with households up and down the country with the cost of living crisis that is obviously, you know, well publicised. But if we can begin to bring inflation down, then maybe it gives the public a sense that actually things are looking up. There is light at the end of the tunnel. We can find our way out of this, fingers crossed.
I'm not sure you're right, really. I do think food massively expensive, and people don't realise cheese, semi-skimmed milk, basics, porridge, all up by something like 80%.
There's no doubt, Eamonn, that, you know, there is a skyrocketing of costs across the board on food, but the big things like energy, once that starts coming down, and it takes time with inflation, it took time to rise, it will take time to taper off, but if this is the beginning of that tapering, then maybe it's good news.
OK, well, it makes it harder for independent produce shops who lose out as people choose to cut back.
Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has visited one family-run business in Nottingham to find out how inflation has impacted on them.
No matter what it is you're looking for, the one thing you'll find in any shop is high prices.
Red peppers you'd expect to pay like 60, 70 pence each, and then we're selling a red pepper for just under £2 for a red pepper.
Miles and his brother run the greengrocers in Beeston, Nottingham. Despite it being a 100-year-old family-run business, he says in his lifetime he's never known things to cost so much.
I've paid this time of year, I paid £8 for a box of tomatoes. We're still paying £16 for a box of tomatoes. So that's 100% increase on this time last year, 100%. But this price of tomatoes 2 months ago went from, on the open market, went up to £24 for a box of tomatoes.
Inflation has been running wild for months. Food and fuel have relentlessly forced it up. Miles says businesses like his only have two options: increase prices or take the loss.
We can only compete by buying quality, so we buy the best quality produce. But quality produce at these inflationary prices is expensive. You know, we've got very, very loyal customers. They're supporting us now, but we can't expect to put our absolute minimum percentage on everything.
Britain imports huge amounts of its fruit and veg, especially in winter. February's salad shortage caused a surprise spike in inflation. The government blamed bad weather in Europe, but Miles says Brexit borders are part of an ongoing problem.
We expect problems next year because produce is getting held up at the docks, so it's taking longer to get here. By the time it gets to us, we have to buy it at a cheaper price because it's not got so much shelf life. So maybe they'll be reluctant to send to us next time because they're getting better prices in mainland Europe.
Outside on Beeston's High Street, shoppers say they can't see an end to their cost of living misery.
Prices are going up by the week.
Doesn't go in pennies, it goes up in pounds.
Luxury goods have gone right out the window, down to basics now.
The British growing season is starting, easing the reliance on foreign food and should help prices to fall. The government wants to drive inflation down to 2%. That could take years. Will Hollis, GB News in Beeston.
So, do you know this trend on TV news? Will Hollis has just said his name and where he was, but the BBC love to do this in particular. So Will Hollis says, Will Hollis there from Nottingham for GB News. And we then say, that was Will Hollis. Will Hollis, our correspondent in Nottingham there with that report, Will Hollis. As if what is the more important thing? The fact we have a report from Nottingham or the fact that it's from Will Hollis? It's just a trend I've noticed in news, particularly on the BBC, where they love to just name check all the reporters over and over and over and over again. And then the other thing they do, and we'll be back with the news at 6:30. Mary will be here. Mary who? What makes them think? And then the weather people.
Out. Go on.
Well, the weather people.
Yeah.
Well, it's true. Why do they just say, and there'll be a full weather update with Fred at 10 to 7. Whereas I look and I say, who is Fred? Who cares who Fred is?
Just the weather.
It's the important thing is that the weather is going to be at 10 to 7 or whatever it is.
Indeed.
Not that Fred is going to be there with the weather. But there is this.
Let us know.
No, but I just personally think why they just keep repeating people's names, people who no one has ever heard of before.
Yeah.
No offence, Will, but basically that was Will in Nottingham, which we said, but we don't need to say it 3 times.
I could just listen to you say Nottingham all morning, to be perfectly honest. It's
What
my
would-
favourite
what would
word.
you say?
Nottingham. I say Nottingham.
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 Nottingham,
No, I
the
say
sheriff of Nottingham.
I just enjoy your little Northern Irish accent when you say it. Nottingham. Say it again.
Nottingham.
Yeah, that's much more interesting than that.
Okay.
Right, let's talk about Elon Musk. We'll give him his full title. He's warned
Elon Musk.
some
Just
AI.
give him his full
Call it
title.
Elon. He's been warning about AI. We've been hearing a lot about those warnings, already saying it's smarter than most human beings and poses a profound risk to society.
Now, amongst the professions said to be under threat of replacement are therapists, with mental health apps already being widely used.
But could they actually be doing more harm than good? Let's speak to the CEO of the British Psychotherapy Foundation, Francis Gillies. Good morning to you, Francis. Look, it must be really important to try and find some other tricks to help people when we just yesterday had the news from House magazine of these hundreds of thousands of children not getting access to mental health services in what we know to be a mental health crisis. If we can use AI, surely that's a good thing.
It's not a good thing if you're a therapist,
It
is
can
it?
be. No, it can be a good thing up to a certain point. So I think a difficulty with these AI apps is that they are only as good as the information you put in. So if you're after some psychoeducation or some general information about a psychological theory, that's great. They will be really helpful for you. But I think the problem is that lots of people don't know why they come into therapy. They don't know what the problem is. And that is when they need to be seen by a human being, by a person, someone who's been trained, someone who can use their therapeutic skills to help them to understand what the difficulty is.
And are you seeing any alarming examples then of where people are actually not being treated sufficiently with devastating consequences?
Well, I think the thing that we worry about the most is around safeguarding and risk assessment. And this is especially difficult, I think, around children and adolescents, but also vulnerable adults as well. That, an AI app or even a social media therapy app can't do a good enough risk assessment, can't offer good enough safeguarding. And so, a child might not be able to say exactly what their issues are or whether they're having thoughts about self-harming. or suicidal thoughts or so on. And it does take trained professionals and quite often to be in person and build a relationship with that person to understand where the dangers might be.
But as the CEO of the British Psychotherapy Foundation, you see the warning signs, you see the danger signs already that members of your profession could be irrelevant in the future, moving ahead.
We actually like to say that we're the only profession that won't be irrelevant when AI takes over some other professions. Psychotherapy cannot be done by a screen. Much of people's communications is unconscious. Much of it is non-verbal. And it takes an empathic understanding of another person to really make therapy worthwhile and to enable good change in somebody.
Yeah.
So we really believe that we're probably the one profession that can't be replaced by AI.
Well, good luck with that, Frances, because in the past week we have watched men having romances or relationships with AI-generated figures that you actually believe are real, and also newsreaders.
Newsreaders. We've also had the boss of Google saying he's very alarmed about the pace of AI. We've also had Elon Musk sounding his warning klaxon. And yesterday, the boss of GCHQ was briefing Cabinet on the risks to society of AI.
Yeah.
So, you know, it really is quite alarming. But as you say, we really do hope that you'll be the last bastion of human employment. I mean, empathy, perhaps that is something that AI will be able to master in the next decade. Who knows?
It may well do at some point, but I think we're an awful long way away from that at the moment. And there is something about unconscious communication that human beings are particularly good at picking up from each other that AI cannot do at the moment. I think the thing about the romantic relationships with AI apps and so on, you know, we have amazing imaginations. That's the thing that makes human beings human, is our capacity for imagination. So I think some people can imagine and use an AI app to imagine that they're in a really wonderful romantic relationship. But I think we know that it's not an actual two-way relationship in reality, and that there is something different between a two-way human-to-human relationship than a human to an AI app.
Oh, you should have talked to the guy we talked to last week, and we're not sure.
He knew it was different. He just knew which he preferred. And that, let me tell you, was not the human two-way interaction.
It was amazing, Frances. It was a woman who was constantly pleasant and nice and just agreed with everything that he said. It was a dream.
Your dream, yeah. Heaven forbid.
And I think that, you know, for some people, that is what they are looking for, and that's fine and good. But good psychotherapy is not pleasant and it's not nice. A good psychotherapy is not there to make you feel better in the moment. Good psychotherapy is painful and difficult. And there's a saying that we say that whatever difficulty you're having in the world, in your relationships, will come out in your therapy relationship. And this makes therapy difficult and painful at times. And this is what some people don't want to get into, but that's fine. They don't have to. They don't have to have psychotherapy. But in order to really change oneself, one has to face up to the thing that's most painful to you.
Gosh.
I'd love to have psychotherapy, Frances.
I'd love you too as well.
What you would find out.
Book him in.
We have a good register of very highly trained psychotherapists at the British Psychotherapy Foundation. So come along, try it.
Do you know
it's
what
an amazing, life-changing situation.
I was just going to say, I think you're amazing people to be able to unpick, take people apart, put them back together, you know, have the compassion to hear people's problems hour after hour, day after day. It does require
sometimes you don't
empathy,
you don't know you've got
like,
problems till they tell you.
Extreme lengths of empathy. Well, I just think it's a pretty admirable profession. So hats off to you. And I'd be amazed if AI can replace you, but who knows? I'm slightly intimidated by AI now. They're after us all. Our jobs, your jobs.
Frances,
I think we have to take it very seriously, definitely.
I agree.
Thanks, Frances. We've got to leave it there, Frances. Thank you. Frances Gillis is the Chief Executive of the British Psychotherapy Foundation. Thank you very much indeed. I think you're right. They're after us all.
They are.
I mean, whereas I thought, who could replace us reading the news? And then we saw that, is it a bot it's called?
Yeah.
That this figure that they basically just feed in any words to it, any words, and this human-like figure sits there and its mouth moves accordingly to
but
what
can they
words
break into Johnny Cash on demand?
Well, you could say, why should they have
Come on,
to?
monkey, dance. Perform for me.
Love is a splendid thing.
There you go.
And it makes a fiery ring. Bound by wild desire, I fell into a ring of fire. Here is the rest of today's top news stories. Bot, follow that.
So at 6:21, the government's plans for an asylum centre in Essex are to be challenged in the High Court today. Braintree District Council argues that the proposed site at RAF Wethersfield is unsuitable due to its isolated location and lack of capacity for local services. The government says using disused military bases to accommodate migrants will reduce reliance on hotels.
It'll still cost, though. Inflation could dip below 10% for the first time since August. Follows a 10.4% figure in February, which saw increased food prices.
Losing weight can lead to the remission of type 2 diabetes for a minimum of 5 years. The Diabetes Remission Critical Trial says following a low-calorie soup and shake diet alongside support from a nurse or dietitian can actually help to manage blood sugar levels and to maintain weight loss.
Very interesting one next. It's an exclusive for us, a GB News report on lottery money, national lottery money going to fund not good causes, but political causes. Next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Eco-protesters, you're having your say on them this morning. Prime Minister says he's going to bring in tougher laws against them. Will it be in time for the marathon on Sunday in London? Tony in Suffolk says, hit the protesters hard. They already have hit the headlines.
Yeah, this is from Christine in Preston. I think the press should stop giving them airtime on the news. If they had no press coverage, there'd be no point in them doing these stupid stunts.
Phil says this just shows how selfish and moronic these people are. Thousands of people who've trained for months, raising millions for good causes. There should be harsher sentencing for these idiots.
Should say they haven't done any harm to the London Marathon yet. Let's hope they don't. They haven't actually, said they will interrupt the race. Let's just see. They're all going to be in Parliament Square, aren't they? But fingers crossed it all goes well. Keep the thoughts coming in. The time's 6:25. Still to come on the programme this morning.
Just after 7 o'clock, we're bringing the latest inflation figures. Amid predictions, it could drop below 10%.
7:20. After a teacher was forced to apologise for not using her students' correct pronouns, we'll be debating if schools should give in to gender-neutral language.
Yeah, so that means what that story is, the correct pronouns is, the teacher came in to the class and said...
From 11-year-olds.
Good afternoon, girls. And apparently 11-year-olds can now dictate what their teacher says to them. What is good afternoon, you, them, it, people, and whatever you identify as. Is that what was she supposed to say?
Well, exactly.
Good afternoon. She can't say guys. She can't say...
It was considered...
Girls. There were girls.
Non-inclusive. It was a girls' school.
Yes.
Anyway, send us your thoughts. That's
no, not anyway. What is she supposed to say?
I don't know.
I know what I'd say.
Good morning, everyone.
No, good afternoon, you sharp little... Oh.
Amen.
But you would say
You'd
that.
be sacked on the spot.
Well, she's going to be sacked for saying girls.
I know.
Might as well go with a bang. gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet to GBNews.
This is a really interesting story. Eamonn and I were talking about the lottery yesterday in relation to somebody who'd been convicted and sent to prison of the most horrendous sex crimes, rape and sexual assaults and attempted rape. And he'd won big, hadn't he? 7 million or something, plus inflation, and he'd been ruled that he could actually claim his winnings. Well, today there's a news story about the lottery, this time about the funding that's normally used for good causes.
What I'd like to know is why is the lottery not on TV anymore? Do you never look on a Saturday night?
Didn't you used to host it?
I used to host the biggest, best
lottery show there was.
How many people were watching? About 12 million.
12 million.
At the time, the National Lottery Jet Set. Time to play the Jet Set. Yeah, it was brilliant, that show. You should write to the BBC and get that back again.
Yes.
But anyway, they don't do any shows based around... Dale Winton used to do a lottery show as well. But they don't do anything like that anymore. They do the numbers, as I understand. But we decided to launch an investigation, not into any of that, but we have revealed that the Lottery Heritage Fund has been used to support political causes.
Yeah, including a speech that described Conservative politicians as devils. Charlie Peters has this exclusive report.
What would you do with six-figure lottery winnings? It's a question lots of Britons dream about answering. But for a collection of activists, that dream became a reality in 2021 when the National Lottery Heritage Fund awarded almost £250,000 to a group called 81 Acts of Exuberant Defiance. The social change project was launched with support from campaign group the Ubele Initiative to mark the 1981 Brixton riots. The money has helped the group put on 81 different events, which call on people to resist the whitening of our history. But GB News can reveal that some of the lottery funding has gone towards supporting a political speech by an activist, breaching the fund's rules. Campaigner Stafford Scott gave a talk at a Brixton venue earlier this month, which accused the royal family of being involved in slavery. He slammed the Met as a gang executing black kids and said the government's crackdown on gangs was fascism. Scott used his lottery-funded talk to describe Boris Johnson and other politicians as devils.
And this man, this devil, you know Mopac, right? You need to know them, my devil is they are devils, and I'm going to show you that they're devils. This woman's called Sophie Linden. She's the Deputy Mayor for Policing. Right now, right, she's a devil.
Tory MP Brendan Clark-Smith said that lottery funding should not be used to promote political causes.
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? I think when people play the lottery, they want to see that money go into good causes, and a lot of it does, of course, and we want to see that spent in our communities properly. What we don't want to see it being used for is these political causes, things that actually cause more tension in the community, and I think that's why it's really, really important not just to look at the applications, but the organisations as well, to make sure that this doesn't happen in future.
The National Lottery Heritage Fund said they do not define heritage. They leave it up to applicants to make their own understanding of what it is. Do you think that this talk that was funded £4,000 counts as heritage?
Well, heritage can mean a lot of things, as we've said there, but I don't think many people would call this heritage at all. And as I said, we want that money to be spent properly. I think a lot of people feel very let down, certainly seeing some of the comments that have been made and where that money is going. But I think this is a wider problem that we've got here. I mean, we have charities, we have community interest companies that really are vehicles for some quite nasty political views. And this is not really where money should be going. It's not in the spirit of the sector. And I think something needs to be done about it.
A National Lottery Heritage Fund spokesperson said that its funding should not be used to promote political beliefs, adding that it had been in touch with the Eamonn initiative to discuss how the project would be delivered. They say that your odds of winning the lottery are 1 in 45 million. But it seems that the chances of your £1 going towards funding political activists is much higher. Charlie Peters, GB News, Brixton.
Remember that stat. Your chances of winning is 1 in 45 million. I never understand why people waste their money on the lottery. Save your money. Every time you would have spent it, put it in an envelope, save it up at the end of the month and take yourself out for a lovely coffee or a treat or something.
I suppose one of the reasons they have a flutter is that they think it'll go to a good cause as well, you know, even if they don't win. But there you are. You see that interpretation from that report. Let us know your views. The time just after 6:30. Stay with us. We'll be talking about the Prime Minister's crackdown on eco-protesters. And will it go far enough? Andy Jones, Stephanie Tetchy, right after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like.
Absolutely.
On Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, The People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Coming up to 25 to 7. Let's bring you up to date with the front pages.
We'll start with the Mail, shall we? They're asking, when will someone get a grip on the eco-fanatics? This is as MPs are calling for police and judges to act now to end climate protesters.
The Sun goes with tough justice. They call out the student Edred Whittingham, son of a millionaire investor who halted the World Snooker Championship.
The Telegraph focuses on Sir Keir Starmer's claims that the NHS is broken.
And the Times says a soup and shake diet can reverse type 2 diabetes. It's prescribed by the NHS. Join us to go through the newspapers in more detail. Writer and journalist Andy Jones, broadcaster Stephanie Tetchy.
Welcome,
Very good to have both of you.
Pretty in peach this morning, Steph. Can we start with these eco-protesters, the front of the Mail, Andy? And look, there is this growing sense of frustration that there's this creep now. We're not just talking about peaceful protests. We're talking about people stopping other people going about their business, and now into their downtime, sporting events.
We had people being stopped from going on holiday, people glued to airports, people stopped from going to work, and now they're stopping the Grand National, they're stopping snooker. Rishi Sunak has been saying these people should be ashamed of themselves, not that he's particularly doing anything about it at the moment. Lee Anderson has said that if one whiff of trouble, the police should crack down. And obviously we've got this problem this weekend coming with the London Marathon, where 30,000 protesters are supposedly planning to come, and it's immensely difficult for the police to police this because you've got a 26.5-mile course, you've got theoretically people can pop up anywhere, and also with, quite rightly, Britain having the right to peaceful protest. These protests are peaceful until somebody's suddenly on the course or somebody's suddenly on the snooker table or somebody's suddenly stopping something. And so it's very difficult for the police to stop that tipping point, I think. And the government did try and force through an amendment in January, which was blocked, and now again they're going to look at again at this. But we're in a position where I think people have never been more considered of green things. We're all recycling, we're all trying to do better. The energy crisis has provided a really great moment for these eco-protesters to say, look at alternative energy. You know, more people are signing up for solar, more people are critical of oil and energy gas companies, and yet they're scoring this spectacular own goal, jumping on snooker tables, stopping the London Marathon potentially. What could be greener than going for a run? You know, running instead of getting a car to work.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the London Marathon, you wouldn't think is necessarily particularly offensive when it comes to the environment. We should point out that Extinction Rebellion said specifically in January that they were stopping their disruptive tactics. So we don't know exactly what their plans are. We do know that 30,000 of them will be in Parliament Square, which will be disruptive just in terms of people, but you know, there's no suggestion at this stage that they are going to stop the London Marathon.
Isabel, I'm continuing to be confused by what they're trying to achieve here, because I feel like they're just turning people off the agenda that they're trying to promote. And I've been quite shocked how the lack of security, like with the snooker event the other day, how they managed to get so far in these situations. And it's quite scary because I think one day they're going to go a step too far.
Yeah.
Well, you see, that's why I think we should take it out of the police's hands, have nothing to do with the police on Sunday, and just ask you, if you are a competitor taking part in the marathon, you've trained all year, you get to 20-something miles and some idiot stands out in front of you. Yeah. Just leave it to the people who are doing the running. I think everybody will pile in and that will put an end to it all.
Then they'll get criminal records for battery.
Where's your sense of fun? Where's your sense of fun? They have an idea.
Don't want to advocate or incite violence.
Well, why it's self-defence, isn't it? I mean, why on earth? I mean, if I had paid my money to go to the Crucible 2 nights ago and my whole trip disrupted, my whole enjoyment of the World Snooker disrupted, well, I would have thought, who's going to reimburse me all this money? Not Don Egypt on the snooker table. What's his name? Whittingham or something?
Edred. Get off that snooker table, Edred.
Yes, yeah. I mean, he's a guy, I suggest he is a guy with a problem. I mean, he looked in pain, he looked in anguish, we're all concerned, as you were saying, about things. We're all happy to go along and take us with you, eco-supporters. Don't stand against people who would normally be in favour of what you're doing.
But it is an interesting debate, because you admitted on Monday morning that now let me get the name of the protesters right, Animal Rising on Saturday did make you think twice about the animal welfare of the Grand National. Perhaps they do, on some level, these protesters, whether we care to admit it or not, make us stop and think about things. Maybe they do. You know, devil's advocate.
They're not making long-lasting changes. That's the thing. And I think they can afford to do all these kind of protests, but at the same time, they have to be thinking of a long-term strategy and something that's going to be cohesive for us all.
And also the targets are baffling. I mean, the snooker, for God's sake, and the marathon and all sorts of things.
Yeah. Front page of the Mirror, I think you got 5 Home Secretaries, 5 Conservative Home Secretaries in front of the Mirror there, and this is in relation to the zombie blades, which the government proposed to outlaw. I don't know why they're not outlawed. I don't know why it's going to take so long to get them outlawed, but tell us more.
So Suella Braverman is now the 5th Home Secretary who's making a promise to ban sales of zombie knives and machetes. And the problem I have with such stories and with the Tories in general, it's all talking politics. You know, since Theresa May was Home Secretary in 2016, 173 young lives have been lost through knife crime. And also, it's a grassroots level. You know, there's this saying that idle hands are the devil's workshop. And I think for a lot of young people, they don't have youth clubs anymore. They don't have anything. It's all about gang culture. So it's all easy to say, yes, we're going to ban the knives, we're going to ban the machetes. But actually, gang culture is still going to be rife in this country. There's still going to be no connection between politics and young people. And that's what's the big thing that's gone wrong here. They just don't know how to connect with young people who have lost the way and don't feel like they fit into the system of this country.
Yeah, I suppose knives aren't necessarily the problem. It's, you know, what is actually the cause of it, the culture, yeah. And the statistics really are shocking.
Absolutely.
Think of the number of knife attacks and indeed deaths.
Yeah.
And the ages involved.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I was listening to one father talking about how his lad tried to intervene in a scrap outside the school, and a lad stabbed him to death with one of these obscene knives, and he'd already been done for carrying a knife, and he was 18, and yet he was sort of out and about doing this. What I will say is if there is willpower to stop this, it would have been stopped already. And that's what I find so... whatever political background you are, we agree that these zombie knives have no business on our streets. And if we talk about trying to buy other things illegally online, whether it's knockoff gear, a lot of these big sites prevent you from doing that. If you're a football fan and you want to watch a dodgy link to watch the Man United game because you don't want to pay for Sky or BT, it's really hard to find those on social media now.
Say your word for it.
I will say, but where there's willpower to stop these things, where there's money involved, where there's a big corporation saying, you need to crack down on this. And these zombie knives are absolutely terrifying. We talk about, you know, they'll still get knives, etc. And, you know, anyone can grab a steak knife or a kitchen knife. But the survival rate of being stabbed with these zombie knives is incredibly...
so easy to get as well.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid and you could go to your local newsagents and you could buy a pen knife. And everybody thought, oh, this is a great idea, you go and buy a pen knife. And I remember coming home with a pen knife, a tiny little thing with the length of your finger sort of thing. You think, oh, this is good. I don't know what on earth you wanted it for. You take a bit of a hedge and you shave it or whatever. But my parents, when they saw me with this pen knife, they were incandescent, so they were, and it was taken and thrown in the bin straight away. And thank goodness they did.
Yeah.
But I thought this was trendy and cool to have this pen knife. But now it would be a zombie knife at 16 quid.
I mean, they're sort of 4 foot long. So
and to be clear, these are the ones that have blades on both sides. I mean, super lethal, so that they do.
But they're glamorised by TV programmes and
yeah.
films, and that's why they are so popular.
Eamonn, you
well.
make a good point. It comes down to the parents. I think a lot of parents are not in touch with actually what their kids have, or if they are involved in gangs. You know, a lot of parents could be preventing their kids from holding on to knives, guns or anything, or even reporting them to the police as well. And I don't think the sentence is 2 years. You'll be out in a year. There need to be more tougher sentences for such things.
Okay.
The NHS is broken, says Sir Keir Starmer. Andy, I mean, no...
Tell us something new, Sir Keir. Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, what the most interesting thing in this... I'm surprised they've picked this as the front page of the Telegraph, but the most interesting thing is this piece of data that says 1 in 5 people are now going to A&E because they can't get a GP appointment. And so we're in a position where doctors, nurses are variously on strike, cutbacks, etc., means that the NHS is struggling already, and now this is in a position which is going to stop the cogs working even further. If people can't get a GP appointment, desperate, they're in pain, they're in agony, they're turning up at A&E, and this is exacerbating the problem. And Keir Starmer is calling out the government in various different ways, saying this is the collapse of general practice, the Prime Minister is sitting on his hands, etc., etc., etc.
It's interesting because, I mean, there's no suggestion that under a Labour government the NHS would be in any better state. We only have to look at what's going on in Wales. But also, you know, yes, they've criticised the strikes as much as Sir Keir Starmer's prepared to. But we know that Wes Streeting's already said he wants to restructure the way that GPs operate. And the BMA have already said that they would fight that as well. So there'll be more strikes under a Labour government, which has had direct consequence on A&E, as Starmer's saying.
Yeah, Wes Streeting, the Labour health spokesman, has been saying he's really frightened about the impact when nurses abandon A&E units, cancer service and critical care, because it's so awful on the front line of the NHS. So many of them are saying, look, I can't handle it, the money's terrible, the prospects, stress, etc. Standing on your feet all day dealing with this sort of problems.
Where's the answer with the NHS? I mean, really, genuinely...
The answer's always going to be money, isn't it? But equally...
But it is. I honestly don't know that the answer is always just pour in more money. I do think there needs to be a huge change, whether, and I've heard talk of a royal commission, where people sit down and talk about reform, change. Let's perhaps start all over again. The fact that people are living so long, there is no way it can remain free from the point of use from birth to death. I don't understand how that model is supposed to be sustained in the current world.
It's such a shame because the NHS used to be like our shining star for this country, and now it's just become a symbol of national disgrace, which is a shame because healthcare is so important for every citizen in this country. And the fact that, you know, it's become this thing where it's just up for debate in politics but nothing's actually been done is quite a shame.
I find the lack of political will with so many problems, whether it's knife crime, whether it's protests, whether it's the NHS, completely absent. I remember Liz Truss, when she was very briefly Prime Minister, going on and doing a BBC roundup to all the different local news, and she was asked, what are you going to do about the roof of the hospital collapsing in Norfolk, which was pretty much her constituency, I believe. And she said, oh, well, I'll speak to the Health Secretary about it. And I thought, well, you're Prime Minister, and you've been constituency MP for that area for so long, and you've still not done anything about it. I mean, if the answer is there's no money, that's the answer. But people aren't given transparency. There doesn't seem to be a political will to change things, and there is a lack of action.
It's the money being funnelled in the wrong direction. When we had reports about these private ambulances, just absolute fortune being spent on those. And we've all talked on this programme before about these six-figure salaries for officers doing these kind of jobs that are nondescript, and then these nurses being paid nothing. The money's going to the wrong places. And
also, we're not training enough of our own NHS staff. We're basically doing the cheap way of trying to get them abroad. The other countries train them, India, Philippines, wherever, and then bring them over. We've stopped giving grants to universities to train these
Labour said they want to increase the number of doctors, and they're going to fund that through the non-dom money that they're going to recoup, which they've spent about 10 times as far as I can tell. But, I mean, it certainly feels like we need to be training more of our own doctors. But the danger then is they're all going to go to Australia. How do you keep them here?
We're talking about the eco protests at the weekend, and I'm just on top of all of this, Andy and Stephanie, the marathon we talked about on Sunday. Do you know what else is happening this weekend?
What else is happening?
2 FA Cup semi-finals at Wembley, right? So you've got London fully stretched out on Saturday and Sunday. How are they going to police the FA Cup semi-final, Man United and Brighton on Sunday, and the marathon?
I don't know.
Incredible.
Overtime's cancelled, I think, for the police this weekend.
Yeah.
Or holiday pay.
To be honest, I think football fans or football hooligans would not have any matches being disrupted at all. I think it'll be really brave of them to try attempt to go on a pitch.
It's a fair point, Stephanie. You know, you get a different reaction. They should be very careful who they plan to disrupt. I mean, citizens at Aintree on Saturday, ordinary members of the public, took part in removing protesters from the course as well. So, as you say, football supporters may not be as delicate as some others may be.
We can only look forward to them getting in the ring to stop Tyson Fury's latest title fight.
Yeah.
Speaking of football, can we talk about Wagatha Christie, Steph? One of my favourite / least favourite stories of last year, but we can't get enough of it, can we? What's the latest?
Well, it's about time Rebecca Vardy won something, because obviously she lost the libel case last year, and she probably has to pay out £1.3 million to Colleen Rooney. But she is quite a savvy businesswoman, because she's now trademarked the term Wagatha Christie.
Oh, very clever.
So that means if it's broadcasting, clothing, cosmetics, drinks, you're going to have to go via Rebecca Vardy, which is quite a smart move, because I know a lot of people think, oh, Wagatha Christie, but you will see people on their hen parties wearing Wagatha Christie dresses or whatever. So it's quite a wide...
Well, it's also more than ironic that it was actually Colleen Rooney who the term was attached to.
Yeah, she was the one that
Rebecca.
dubbed it after she found out that Rebecca was selling stories to the newspapers. So she dubbed it. But as well, Colleen, she has a documentary coming up with Disney. So, you know, it begs to ask why these rich women need to continue trying to bank off this, but there is interest in this. We've already had a West End musical, we've had a play, we've had a TV drama. So
what's left to sell? I mean, this is the other thing. It's like she's talking about if anyone puts Wagatha Christie on a mug, then they'll have to get permission. But I don't know about everybody's interest in this, but I can't imagine the person who's desperate to buy a Wagatha Christie mug.
I reckon they've got their groupies. There's a lot of people in this country who aspire to be wags, that's for sure. I'm just be interested to see what Colleen Rooney's counter move will be, because she never wants Rebecca Vardy to have the upper hand.
Well, she has her Disney documentary coming out, so that's going to be like a 2-hour thing. So
what's that going to be on?
It's going to be about the whole case, how she felt, so unseen footage, probably Wayne's going to make an appearance in it. But this is a court case that keeps giving, even though we have the verdict.
OK, thanks, guys, for the moment. Stephanie and Andy will be back in 40 minutes' time. Let's bring you up to date with today's top stories. This is how they're shaping up. The Prime Minister is set to deliver a closing address to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. This is at Queen's University in Belfast, and Rishi Sunak will vow to give everything to tackle the problems of a divided society in Northern Ireland.
Former SNP leadership contender Kate Forbes says the party's facing a critical moment and needs urgent action. Yesterday, Colin Beattie became the second person to be questioned by detectives as part of a probe into the SNP's finances.
Some parts of England are becoming dental deserts due to NHS dentist shortage, according to the Liberal Democrats, who say that some areas have 3,000 people per one NHS dentist.
Now, Paul O'Grady's funeral arrangements have been fully confirmed for tomorrow after the TV legend died unexpectedly last month at the age of 67.
Yeah, and it'll be a private ceremony for Paul's family and closest friends, but there will be a chance for locals to pay their respects as well.
And here with all the details is our showbiz reporter, Ellie Phillips. Good morning to you,
Morning,
Ellie. In fact, the last time you were here, we were talking about the shocking news that Paul O'Grady had sadly died. So tell us more then about this funeral.
Yeah, so tomorrow the funeral is taking place. As you said, it's a private funeral. But Paul's husband, Andre Portasio, has actually invited local residents, in particular local residents, to pay their respects by lining the streets as the corsage heads through the village where they lived, which is called Aldington. It's in Kent. It's a very small village. So he's given timings, he's given places that they can stand, just so that there's no kind of backlog for traffic and things like that. And then after that, they are going to head to Portland Safari Park, which is where a private ceremony is going to take place. And that's somewhere that was really special to Paul. It was like 3 miles from where they lived. He went there all the time to see the animals. As you know, he was an animal lover. But I think it's really nice that his loved ones are giving away for those in the local community to pay their respects, because he was really well known there. He loved everyone around him. And so I think it's a really wonderful way that you can have the balance between everyone paying their respects. You know, he's an icon, they want to do that, but then also the family having their private time as well.
Absolutely.
OK. Just some worrying news about the performing legend Barry Humphries. This is news reaching us from Australia. Read him.
Yeah, so Barry Humphries, obviously incredible Australian comedian, actually lives in England now, but was back over in Australia visiting family. He fell in January and broke his hip, went into hospital, had a new hip fitted, and then was calling himself Bionic Bazza after this hip. He said, you know, I'm made of steel now. But sadly, it doesn't seem to have gone well. He's gone back into hospital, so he's now back in hospital in Sydney with family at his bedside. He's aged 89, obviously famed for playing Dame Edna Everage since 1985, and in a statement, it's been said that he's in a serious but comfortable position and thankfully still finding moments of humour while he's there as well.
I do have to say, and it's not often that I would say this, but with Barry Humphries, you find yourself in the company of genius. I mean, this man is truly an intellectual genius. I've never witnessed anybody as smart and but also as funny. He's hilariously funny.
What's your most favourite memory?
When he does Dame Edna, you know, when he doesn't do Dame Edna as Barry Humphries, he always flirted outrageously with my wife, and she's like him. She has a bit of a mucky mind,
right?
And so he's able to say things that gets her the tears pour from her eyes, and he makes her. Well, it's very funny to watch. He is a genius, and it's a privilege to be in his company and to see him close up and personal. I hope he gets better. Barry better, Bazza, about all the way, the good wishes all the way to Sydney.
Absolutely. You were on the red carpet, Ellie, last night, star-studded event. Tell us more about the Citadel premiere.
So it was the global premiere held in London last night. It was actually at the Royal Theatre, Drury Lane, but they kept it all a secret for ages, and they actually built a secret entrance onto the back of the theatre, which was called a Citadel, and you walked through and it looked like a pub, but then it had a secret entrance going through, so they really went to town on this. Citadel is a $300 million production, but it's not a movie. It's a series coming to Amazon Prime, which is a huge amount of money if you think for what's essentially a TV show. But what bang do you book for get 300 million? You get Priyanka Chopra, you get Richard Madden, you get Stanley Tucci, and you get Leslie Manville. So the cast is amazing. It's a spy thriller drama, action-packed. So the premiere was last night, and then they showed 2 of the first episodes, not dropping until the 28th of April. They showed the first 2 to kind of give a teaser and give a taste. It is amazing. The production is like mind-blowing. You never see anything like this on television. And the interesting thing about this is the Russo brothers are behind it. We'll know them from the Marvel films. And what's interesting about this is they're creating a franchise at the very start, but not the kind of franchise you think of. When you think of a franchise, I think you think of a sequel, maybe an offshoot, but they're actually making 3 of these around the world. So they've got one in production in India at the moment. They've got one in production in Italy with totally different casts. So and they're all linked together.
For different audiences.
For different audiences, but they want them to be an international audience. So they're going to be available on Prime to 190 countries worldwide when they all go out on April 28th. And the idea is they all link up together from these films from all around the world. And you're introduced very early on in the first instalment, first episode, that it is international because Richard Madden, Priyanka Chopra, who play these spies, they speak in like 6 languages very quickly.
Wow.
Just very short snippets, but it makes you go, OK, this is bigger than we think.
This is global.
And the actual premise of it is that it's a global spy entity called the Citadel. They're the goodies. And then there's the baddies who are called the Manticore, and they're run by the 5 richest families in the world.
One to watch, then.
Very good, yeah.
Ellie, thanks for bringing this up to date there on the showbiz front. We'll take a break. We'll be back right after this.
Morning, this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. My name's Alex Deakin, and today most of us will see some good spells of sunshine. The southwest, though, seeing more cloud and a few showers, and we do again have a brisk easterly wind generated by this chunky area of high pressure sitting over Scandinavia, and around it the winds feeding in from the North Sea. So again, these eastern coasts will be very fresh, whereas further west in the sunshine, Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, feeling fairly pleasant. Those easterly winds also bringing in quite a bit of cloud. A few showers this morning over southwest England. Hit and miss, but 1 or 2 heavy ones are possible here as we go through the day. They're tending to drift away. A bit more cloud at times over the Midlands and Wales. Again, the possibility of an afternoon shower. But generally, eastern England turning sunnier. Sunny spells for Scotland, Northern Ireland for most of the day. And we could again get to 18, 19 in Western Scotland, whereas that east coast, with that easterly wind, 11 or 12, as I said, will feel pretty fresh. Quite a fresh night to come as well. The cloud tends to drift further away to the west, so clear spells for many. Quite a bit of cloud developing in that easterly wind over the Pennines. And temperatures again dipping where we've got clear skies and lighter winds over northern Scotland. A hint of frost certainly possible through some sheltered glens. Most towns and cities staying above freezing, but certainly a cold feel as we head through to Thursday morning. Again, for most places, Thursday looking dry and bright with sunny spells, some cloud at times over the Pennines, maybe some around the coasts of northeast Scotland. Later on, the cloud is likely to increase across East Anglia and the southeast, with the chance of some wet weather moving in here on Thursday evening. Still got that brisk easterly wind, keeping things cold, 10, 11 at best here, whereas further west in the sunshine into the teens, and again Western Scotland could reach 16 or 17 Celsius. The high that has been over Scandinavia drifting to the north of the UK, allowing low pressure systems and weather fronts to bring a cooler feel with more showers, certainly across England and Wales as we head into the weekend.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank. My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
MPs pressure the Prime Minister to crack down on eco-activists as protesters plan to disrupt the London Marathon.
Hello there, very good morning to you. The time, 7 o'clock, Wednesday, 19th of April. Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Rishi Sunak says the behaviour of protesters who disrupt sporting events is selfish and reckless as he pledges to push ahead with legislation to crack down on public order offences.
Now, this comes as environmental groups, including Extinction Rebellion, prepare to flood the capital with 30,000 environmental activists during the London Marathon and the FA Cup semi-final this weekend.
The Scottish First Minister is facing a growing SNP rebellion over his decision not to suspend Nicola Sturgeon. It comes after the arrest of party treasurer Colin Beattie yesterday as part of a probe into the party's finances.
Latest inflation figures, we're standing by ready for those. Forecasts optimistic that the figure will drop below 10% because of falling energy prices. However, food prices are still sky high. Figures yesterday saw wage growth continue to lag behind inflation. They're due any minute. We'll bring them to you.
And fragments said to be from the cross that Jesus was crucified on will be used as part of the Coronation procession. The relics will be set in a newly made cross of Wales and were gifted to the King by Pope Francis.
In fact, those inflation figures have just been released at 7 o'clock. Liam Halligan, our economics editor, across those. Liam.
Well, I have to say, this is not a great inflation figure. The number is down. We were at 10.4% during the year to February. We're now down at 10.1% during the year to March. That was the January number as well. So inflation is not down into single digits. This is the Consumer Price Index. I have to say, I think the reason that's happening, I'm literally just looking at the front page of the press release now. Before I delve into it, I think the reason that's probably happening is because of ongoing high food prices. And if that is the case, that's going to be very, very controversial, Eamonn, because wholesale food prices, the amount of money that farmers get at the farm gate for their food, food prices throughout the supply chain, they've been coming down for 12 months in a row.
OK, so who's making out of this? Someone's making money out of this.
Well, it strikes me that there's a lot of anti-competitive practices within our very complex food supply chain. We had a survey out from Which yesterday. This isn't the official number because I haven't looked at it yet. I'm literally responding. But a survey out from Which, a survey of 26,000 goods across 8 different supermarket chains, said that food price inflation was going up in March and was above 17%, so much higher than the 10% basic rate of inflation.
Well, look, you get your head into those. We'll ask people what they think about this, where they're finding, how they're finding their food prices and where they are going northwards, more or less, it seems. Let us know, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at gbnews.
Now we're going to focus some more on what's being dubbed eco-warriors. Rishi Sunak says the behaviour of protesters who disrupt sporting events is selfish and reckless as he pledges to push ahead with legislation to crack down on public order offences.
Now, it comes as environmental groups, including Extinction Rebellion, prepare to flood the capital with 30,000 environmental activists during the London Marathon and both FA Cup semi-finals at Wembley this weekend.
Well, joining us this morning for some more political analysis is Leon Emirali. Good morning again to you, Leon. Look, this is a difficult one because, of course, you have to protect the right to protest in this country, and yet these endless, it feels like now, doesn't it, protests are disrupting not only people going to work, but now people enjoying leisure and sporting events.
Yeah, and I think, Isabel, it's the scale of this disruption that we're seeing now, which is why the Prime Minister is under pressure to take action on it. But we don't want to go down the route of some countries around the world where there's particularly heavy-handed policing, where there is a restriction on people's right to protest. And I don't think anyone has a gripe with someone being able to protest in a peaceful, non-disruptive way. But what we've seen recently at sporting events, potentially what we're going to see this weekend, I just think it gets on people's nerves that ultimately this is intruding on people's leisure, on people's enjoyment, and it isn't right for people who've trained hard for a marathon or snooker players at the top of their game that gets interrupted. And I think this is why the Prime Minister's facing calls.
Right, now
You know what? Life is tough. Life is tough for almost everybody at the moment, and the few little bits of joy, people get an escape through sport. And we're at this time of the year where so many things happen, big golf tournaments, tennis tournaments, football comes to a conclusion as well, the Grand National. We're talking about all these things, and now the marathon, and these people are not reading the room. They come in here and they just are spoil sports for everyone, and I reckon they're probably doing themselves more harm than good.
100%. And I think most people would recognise that, climate change is an issue. But I think those that are sympathetic to it are turned off by this type of activity because it isn't what ordinary folk recognise. And quite frankly, it isn't on people who are watching snooker. It isn't on people who are watching football or running the marathon. It is on our government to take action. And it isn't targeting the right audience.
So what will the public order bill do to change all of this? This is what Rishi Sunak's reiterated, underlining it won't, he's pressuring, doubling down on it, if you like, saying this is what we're going to do. Will that really change things?
Well, the truth is, Isabel, if you are hell-bent on making your point, you're going to do it. And what the Prime Minister will be hoping that the public order bill does is creates a stronger deterrent for those who might be inclined to protest in a disruptive way. Essentially, it's like saying, look, if you do go ahead with this, you're going to get more than just a slap on the wrist. There could be a criminal record. There could be higher issues, more pressing issues that you'll face with your own background. And I think that is what the Prime Minister's hoping
Leon,
for.
just looking at the reaction coming in from those people listening and watching us, Phil saying, this shows how selfish and moronic these people are. Thousands who have trained for months, raising millions for good causes. There should be harsher sentencing for these idiots, and that's reflected by someone like Bob, who says they should be given 40 hours community service minimum, and that should be at racing stables. They might actually learn something with that. And it goes on and on and on. And as I was saying before, I just don't gauge much sympathy for the cause that I assume a lot of people wouldn't necessarily be totally against.
No, and you have to bring people along with you if you want to be able to make these big changes in areas like climate change. And what this type of activity is doing is just alienating people rather than trying to win them on board. And I think a lot of those viewers and listeners who are writing in, that isn't a small view. That is shared across the country. The people are sick and tired of this kind of disruption.
Just lastly, before we let you go, you obviously spent time in the Treasury. We've just had those ONS figures on inflation out, down from 10.4% in March to 10.1%. Bit disappointing. They're expecting it to be around 9.8 out of double digits.
It is.
Will the Treasury be disappointed by that, do you think, this morning?
Well, there will be, and I think what it does is it spikes the narrative that actually we are on course for something that's far more positive. And I think by getting it into single figures, if that was the aim, they could have that narrative and they could sell that narrative politically. But now they can't, and I think food prices clearly are at the crux of that, and that's what a lot of people, households up and down the country, are going to be worried about.
OK, well, let's go to our economics editor. Leon, thank you very much indeed. Liam Halligan has been crunching those numbers. You've had a chance to just look a bit deeper into what the report's saying today.
Yeah, so we've been highlighting for weeks on GB News the fact that food price inflation has been screaming ahead, even though wholesale food prices have been coming down. And I wouldn't say I'm relieved, but it's certainly telling that that's indeed what's been happening officially in these numbers. As I said earlier, in February, the year to February inflation was 10.4%, the headline CPI, Consumer Price Index number, down only to 10.1% in March. And that will mean the government isn't able to put forward this narrative that interest rates have peaked, the next move in rates is down. This is going to hit consumer business sentiment. food price inflation, it's not 10.1%, which general inflation is. In February, it was 18.2%, and in March, it's gone up to 19.2%, a material increase. So food prices are actually not just going up, they are accelerating. Even though, as I've said many, many, many times, wholesale food prices are coming down. And this is a very politically sensitive price, of course.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so just for someone very simple like me, if something cost £1 a year ago, it's £1.18 today. The same item.
Food. That's right. If it's food.
Yeah,
if it's food. And that's on average. I mentioned that Which survey yesterday, which has now been entirely borne out and officially confirmed by the ONS. The Which survey of 26,000 goods yesterday said that there were things like simple loaves of bread that were up 60%. There were 8 sausages that were up 75%. And we're not talking about at the posh end. We're talking about basic staples in some of the food discounters.
You're talking about porridge, you're talking about cheese,
That's
you're
right.
talking about semi-skimmed milk.
And, of course, the less well-off pay disproportionately a much higher share of their income, whether it's benefit or wage income, on food, but also on energy. And, of course, you've had energy price inflation and on housing. The second biggest increase in inflation has been in restaurants and cafes. That's up by over 11% as well. Housing up by over 11%. So food and housing, the basics of life, it's very, very difficult to sell this as an economic success when the cost of living squeeze is still biting, and biting most significantly on less well-off people, on the essentials of life.
It's also very difficult to settle wage claims if you're the government.
This is going to make it a lot harder for the government to address that industrial action. This is going to really embolden a lot of the trade unions who have been pushing for double-digit wage rises.
Liam, what is behind the cost of food? Because we heard from food producers this was to do with the cost of energy, but we are seeing the cost of energy is going down. So why is that not being passed on in terms of those producers and therefore to the consumers buying food?
Well, when you think about when food appears in your supermarkets, it's not just about the food itself. And as I've said, wholesale food prices on global markets and on national markets have been coming down a lot. For 12 months in a row, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Index has been falling. But I guess the food producers, the food retailers would say, yes, but food production also involves lots of labour. The cost of labour has been going up. It involves lots of packaging. The cost of that's been going up, the cost of transport as well. But I don't think anything can justify this kind of runaway food price inflation that we're seeing at the moment, when in general inflation, albeit slowly, is coming down.
So, if I was the PM or sitting in the cabinet there, I'd just want to call in a number of people into 10 Downing Street, set them down and say, what's going on here? And those people, I suppose we're looking at the head of the supermarket.
I would get the big supermarket bosses in and say, you know, the convention is you do compete, you know, price of milk's coming down. Indeed, one of our major food retailers very symbolically lowered the price of milk last week for the first time since 2020. Maybe they knew this was coming. I'm not saying that there's wrongdoing there. They're not here to defend themselves. But I would want to know, if I was the Prime Minister, what's actually happening here? Why is it that there's this completely stark contrast between tumbling wholesale food prices and accelerating retail food prices? There is nothing more sensitive in any political system than the price of food. There aren't many laws in economics, but that's one of them.
Yeah, and just you touched on it, but what does this mean in terms of interest rates? The Bank of England will have to make a decision based on these inflation figures.
There is no interest rate decision this month. The Monetary Policy Committee at the Bank of England meets 8 times a year. This is one of the months that it doesn't meet. It will next meet in early May, but we're at 4.25% now, and people like me have been saying for weeks, if inflation falls into single digits, then maybe there won't be another interest rate rise. It's going to be very hard to not do another interest rate rise now when inflation is still over 5 times the Bank of England's 2% target and down only marginally on the month before.
Liam Halligan there with lots of cheery news. Not. Thanks, Liam. Thanks very much indeed. We'll have more analysis on those retail price figures and the rate of inflation throughout the programme this morning.
Now, the Conservatives in Scotland say the SNP is in total meltdown as the party is struggling to recover from the arrest and release of Treasurer Colin Beattie, as well as the continuing investigation into the party's finances.
Well, former leadership candidate Kate Ford also says the party leadership needs to take decisive action on internal affairs. Let's go to the political editor of HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield, in all of this. Kevin, good morning. Good to see you. But just trying to say, I mean, SNP, we just used the term there, being reported that it is in meltdown. How would you describe it?
Yeah, I don't think that's overstating the case. The party has rather spectacularly unravelled since Nicola Sturgeon resigned, and that was only a couple of months ago. Since then, they've had a bitterly divisive leadership campaign, won by Humza Yousaf very narrowly from Kate Forbes, who you just mentioned there. And obviously since then, we've had the arrest of Peter Murrell, the former chief executive, who's also married to Nicola Sturgeon, and yesterday Colin Beattie, the SNP treasurer. Now, neither men have been charged, they've been released pending further inquiries, but the optics of it is just terrible, and huge questions are still unanswered, and this is going to run for quite some time, I think.
And just to remind people, this is all about donations, £600,000 or so, which was supposed to be earmarked for campaigning for independence, and their whereabouts as we stand today are not really known.
No, that's right. So there was a crowdfunder appeal launched, I think it was 2017, in the expectation that there would be a second independence referendum imminently. Now, that raised round about £660,000. Now, as we know, there hasn't been a second referendum. There isn't one on the horizon. But that money doesn't seem to be in the SNP accounts anymore. Now, the police were asked to investigate a couple of years ago as to where this money has gone, and now this investigation is really reaching a bit of a crescendo now as the police try to ascertain exactly what happened to this money. Now, the SNP obviously insists that no wrongdoing has taken place, but clearly the police are still investigating it, and we await to find out exactly what they uncover.
And
Kevin, how does the new leader come out of all of this, Humza Yousaf? I mean, there he is. He's inherited a real poisonous bowl of soup, hasn't he?
Well, he certainly has. I mean, what's difficult for him is that he ran in the leadership campaign as the continuity candidate, as the one who Nicola Sturgeon supported. Now, she never actually came out and publicly supported him, but lots of people round about her did. So he was very much seen as, her anointed successor. Now, obviously, it's not a great look for him to be closely associated with Nicola Sturgeon when her husband has just been arrested and the party treasurer has just been arrested, and there's all this controversy over how the party was run under her watch. Now, he's now trying to sort of remove himself from that and try to strike out as his own man. Yesterday, he set out his programme for government for the next 3 years, ditched quite a few of Nicola Sturgeon's policies. So he's trying to now distance himself from the woman who he said he was very close to. So it's very uncomfortable for him.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's taken over the party.
But Kevin, how uncomfortable would it be for her to sit on the back benches? It's all right saying, she can step down as First Minister. She sits on the back benches. She goes on as a constituency MP or whatever. Well, what would you predict if you were going into your crystal ball for Nicola Sturgeon?
Well, what's interesting, Eamonn, is that she was meant to be back in Parliament this week after the Easter recess, and it was announced that she wouldn't be in Parliament itself. She would be working remotely. Now, she said she doesn't want to be a distraction for Humza Yousaf. The longer that goes on, or the longer this police investigation goes on, you've got to imagine that she's always going to be a distraction. And if she can't physically be in Parliament for fear of drawing too much controversy, then you've got to imagine that a decision will need to be taken as to whether or not she continues as an MSP. And yet I wouldn't be surprised if at some point she decides just to stand down and leave the Scottish Parliament altogether, which would obviously be quite uncomfortable for the SNP as well.
I mean, it might help Humza Yousaf, who was described yesterday as a lame duck First Minister as he addressed Holyrood for the first time. But it might help him if he actually pushed her out, wouldn't it? I mean, if he actually forced her hand, that would perhaps help him distance himself from what's now a toxic brand, surely.
Well, it certainly would, but that would be the nuclear option, I think. I mean, for Humza Yousaf to effectively kick Nicola Sturgeon out of Scottish politics after, she dominated it for 15 years, won so many elections with the SNP, that would be a remarkable development. I'm not sure he'd want to go that far. I think maybe some private words would be had behind the scenes, and a decision it might be Nicola Sturgeon's decision at the end of the day that she just doesn't want to be that distraction. I mean, she's a smart enough politician to know that this is not good for the SNP at all, to put it mildly, and I think she might end up taking that decision ourselves.
Kevin, appreciate your thoughts. Thank you very much indeed. Kevin Schofield is the political editor, HuffPost UK. Thank you very much indeed.
With the time at 7:19, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories. The government's plans for an asylum centre in Essex will be challenged in the High Court today. Braintree District Council argues that the proposed site at RAF Wethersfield is unsuitable due to its isolated location and lack of capacity for local services. The government says using disused military bases to accommodate migrants will actually reduce reliance on hotels.
Former cabinet ministers say a new deal on workers' sick pay is needed in order to boost the economy. Priti Patel and Sir Robert Buckland are calling for simple tweaks to statutory sick pay. Latest figures show an all-time high of 2.5 million people off work due to long-term sickness.
Losing weight can lead to the remission of type 2 diabetes for a minimum of 5 years. The Diabetes Remission Critical Trial says following a low-calorie soup and shake diet alongside support from a nurse or dietitian can actually help to manage blood sugar levels and maintain weight loss.
Here's the question. Should schools use gender-neutral language after a teacher was told off by her students, who are 11 years of age, for not using the right pronouns? She said, "Good afternoon, girls," when it was a class of all girls. But what should she have said after this?
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Hello there, still to come on the programme today at 7:45. We're going to be getting the latest on planning from the Coronation. How is that going? As an anti-monarchist group announces it will disrupt the event with chance of Not My King.
Yeah, and then the Prime Minister is to return to Northern Ireland today, and our reporter will be live from Belfast as Rishi Sunak prepares for a gala dinner in the city to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday.
You see, does no one have respect for anything anymore? I mean, even whether you agree with Charles or don't agree with Charles, why would you go to the point of standing, protesting and shouting, and the people who throw eggs and do all that business? Why can't they just let it happen and sort of mumble under their breaths? There's no respect, is there?
No respect.
No
but
respect.
Perhaps if you're anti-monarchy, you don't respect the monarchy.
But why would you be so inflamed to be anti-monarchy? You could say, well, I'm not in favour of them all, you know, but what is the difference that you wake up and you think, I am anti-monarchy, the most important thing in my life today is to be anti-King Charles?
You know what, though? You didn't see many anti-monarchy protests under Her Majesty the Queen, did you?
I don't know. I don't know, because I don't really think about it one way or the other.
I think, I mean,
I think that tourism would be completely ruined in this country. You've only got to go around places like Windsor or Sandringham or Buckingham Palace to see the amount of people that are drawn. What is this country without monarchy? I mean, boring, that's what it is, really boring. And I don't care if you like it or don't like it or whatever, it's just there.
Just for one day, keep your opinions to yourself,
It's
you know?
theatre, isn't it? It's all a bit of something. I mean, if you went, you know, why would you bother going to Windsor if the royals weren't there and the bands weren't marching around and the guards and, you know, there's a chance to spot some sort of junior royal doing something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway.
Let us know your thoughts.
Let us know your views. Talking about Not My King, what do you do if you walk in to a classroom and you're a teacher, and it's an all-girls private school, right? We're just painting the picture here. And you come in and you're the teacher, also a woman, and you come in with your notes and their homework's marked and whatever, and you go, afternoon, girls. And you're basically, I mean, I don't know, they sort of metaphorically throw eggs at you, basically, and they are really annoyed, these girls, at being called girls.
Yes, the teacher actually refused to call a child them. She then faced student playground protests, and she claimed she was managed out of her job.
No, again, I smile at this because I think of, you know, if I was 11 at school and saying, I'm going to sit down in the playground or we're going to do, you just would have been expelled. That would have been it. Just shut up and get on with it. Former teacher Leslie Hardesty says you shouldn't be using gender-neutral pronouns. In other words, you shouldn't come in and say, hi, guys, or hi, class, or something like that.
Couldn't say guys.
You can't say guys.
No.
Right, oh, I don't know. I'd be used to
Whereas Baz Ramia, who's head of policy at the Centre for Education and Youth, says we actually need to support trans kids with inclusive language. So let's open up the debate.
Yes, Baz, so if you walked into that classroom of that afternoon and you were faced with all these little 11-year-olds in pigtails, what would you have said?
Well, I think we can all agree that all of our children deserve to go to a school where they feel safe, welcome and cared for. And when this teacher deliberately decided to not use inclusive language when she found out that there was a gender non-conforming child in her class, she made that child feel unsafe, unwelcome and uncared for.
So we know for a fact there was some child there who felt worried by this use, or were they just all making a general point?
No, that's what I understand of the story, Eamonn, is that a child did identify themselves as being gender non-conforming. The teacher refused to use their preferred term of reference. The following morning, she returned to the classroom to find that class had actually quite conscientiously and mindfully written their names on the whiteboard and said what their preferred pronouns were, their preferred terms of reference. At that point, she continued to refuse. At that point, this teacher is deliberately choosing to make this child feel unsafe.
You would have come in and said afternoon class.
I think there's various terms that can be used, and I think afternoon class is a good one, afternoon children, afternoon young people. There's lots of guidance out there from organisations that have a lot of expertise in this area. I think this is a really important issue because we know that gender non-conforming young people are a very vulnerable group of young people. 65% of them experience bullying, and a lot of that bullying can end in tragedy, as we saw in the case of the tragic murder of Brianna Gay recently. So it's absolutely vital that teachers who take their protective duty seriously make these vulnerable young people feel safe.
So let's see what Leslie thinks about this. Do teachers have a duty of care then to take into consideration those vulnerable pupils, or do you see it as acquiescing to the demands of precocious 11-year-old girls?
Well, I had an autistic child who at 11 wanted to be a boy because boys got more treats and more food. And she actually ended up in care because she became so absolutely past herself in knowing what was the future for her. And I think you've got to be very careful at 11 that they're very impressionable, going to go through puberty, aren't really aware of what's around them, seeing too much on the internet and being influenced by other people. And I think if a parent chooses to send a child to an all-girls school, then they have identified their child as a girl.
Right, OK, so you would say, actually, you're not doing that kid any favours by what you would see as sort of pandering to what are impressionable views at the moment, and actually you're doing that child a favour by honouring the parents' wishes and referring to them in their biological sex?
Yes, until they're old enough to make that decision. And we've seen recently with the Tavistock clinic that, you know, children have wished that as they got older that they hadn't transitioned.
So what would you have said that afternoon? How would you have addressed the class?
Well, I might have said girls because they were girls. And I think you've got to be very careful as well with this choice of they and them, because they and them is plural. It's not singular, and it's very confusing if you're using the wrong pronoun in a singular fashion. So I think we also have to respect the traditional English language and continue to use the correct pronouns in the correct way. And if you want to use a gender-neutral pronoun, it's it. And we refer to animals as it.
Well, not even all animals. People sometimes refer to animals in much more affectionate terms than that. Baz, what do you make of all of that? I mean, there is an argument. We hear of these high-profile people, say Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who says, gosh, if I had been growing up in today's society, I'd have been all over the place, incredibly confused and wanted to identify as a boy. She was a tomboy. She loved boys' things. She loved her hair short, and then she grew out of it. And there has to be a legitimate concern, as Leslie says, about trying to help people grow up before they make
But she wasn't a boy. She wasn't a boy. Why would you have called her a boy?
I'm just saying she's grateful she wasn't in that situation, or she'd have ended up perhaps going down that road. But actually, she grew out of it, which was, as Leslie was saying. I'm just saying, Baz, is there not a danger?
I think the issue fundamentally is that schools are not sealed off from the world. Schools are part of the world. And the fact is that the world is changing. People's attitudes in the world towards gender are changing. People's experience of gender is changing. According to the most recent census, 250,000 people in the UK identify as being transgender in some form or another. 90% of secondary school teachers have at least one pupil who identifies as being transgender. So the world is changing, and that's not something schools can stop. But what schools can do is they can choose how they respond to it. And if we want schools to be places that are caring, compassionate and safe for vulnerable young people, then they can change by changing their language to be inclusive.
By highlighting that someone wants to be referred to as different. And we all know that bullying thrives on differences as well. That by saying, I am different, call me they or them or whatever, that sets them out.
I don't think that's the case. I think when teachers deliberately and knowingly in front of a class refuse to acknowledge a transgender or non-conforming child's identity, they send a signal to the children in that class that it is OK to disrespect that child. It is OK to treat them as if a big part of their identity does not matter. And we know that the consequence of that is, as I was saying, 65% of transgender young people experience bullying. They also experience mental health issues, suicide and alienation from family at much higher rates. So we're talking about a group of young people who are already very vulnerable, and it is an absolute duty of care for all teachers to make those young people feel safe. And that's the kind of schools we want in our country.
I had a child that did transition, and as a special needs teacher, I was very sensitive to children's needs. But I had a little girl who also thought she should be a boy because she liked cricket and football. I've had a niece whose daughter's tried to commit suicide because of the internet rubbish that she was reading and got completely confused by her gender. And now at 18, with she's sorted and settled and realises that she is a girl. So you can push the transgender issue far too young, and then make that complication too great. And by singling them out, actually, and by not referring to girls as girls, you draw attention to them, and that can actually cause more bullying.
OK. Guys, you both stated your case very well. Which one has got the right answer to all of this? Baz or Leslie? Thank you both very, very much indeed. And let us know, GBViews at gbnews.co.uk. Should schools go gender neutral?
Stay with us. We'll discuss why Disney characters Mickey and Minnie will now be dressed in pride costumes. Andy Jones and Stephanie Tecci having their say on today's papers next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, very nice to see you again. We're going to go through the newspapers at that time of the morning. Writer, journalist Andy Jones, broadcaster, journalist, woman of all seasons, Stephanie Tetchy here this morning. And Stephanie, Lord Hague,
yes,
he has warned the Women's Institute. He's sort of taken issue with the Women's Institute. Why is this?
So the Women's Institute, a few members from there have been campaigning basically to overturn a policy which has been overturned to allow trans women into the fold. And William Hague, during a recent interview, Lord Hague, in a recent interview, has said that these women should just get over it and that we need to accept that transgender women are a part of society, which is rightly so. They should be respected for their choices. But we are a democracy, and in that sense, if these women want to campaign to keep the Women's Institute as an institute that's only for biological women, they should have that freedom to do so. And I think the problem is now is if, as a woman, you campaign to say that you just want something to remain as women who are biologically women, then you're seen as a transphobic, and that's not necessarily the case. It's more complicated.
So where do you stand on this?
My stance on this is that being a woman is based off shared experiences you've had from birth. And I find that sometimes, I think, with I've interviewed a lot of trans women, and they say even though they've had the surgery, mentally, they're still catching up on being a woman. And I think in institutes like this, you need women who can represent women in the right way. It's about the advancement of education, and even while men can help, who can do a better job than a woman.
So you do not agree with William Hague on this?
I don't agree. And you know what as well, Eamonn, what I find in the newspapers, it's all about transgender women. We haven't actually seen the perspective of transgender men trying to get into private male clubs and all that kind of stuff. It seems that women are under attack more than men.
So transgender men are men who've had their genitalia cut off?
Yeah, no. Transgender men were born women, but they've become men. Mm-hmm. We don't hear about those issues.
Wait a minute.
A transgender woman is previously born a man.
No, it's the man bit.
Transgender man was born a woman.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
How do you become a man if you haven't got bits?
Well, there's surgery for it.
You can get bits added on.
Yes, you can. There's transgender men, and that's my problem as well. In the newspapers, there's this big focus on transgender women, and William Hague can say these kind of situations because men are not being forced. Men can still be men. We can still call men men.
Let's flip this on its head, though. I mean, a lot of this last century, women were campaigning for male-only clubs and societies to be closed, places where women weren't allowed to go. You think of Pall Mall, gentlemen's clubs, and women have fought hard to be able to be included in a lot of those places. And men would say, no, hang on a minute, this is a men's-only space.
Yes.
Women have been successful in being allowed into that. Should women, therefore, not return the favour and say, look, if someone identifies as a woman, they might not have been born as one, and they are welcome to join the Women's Institute?
Well, I don't think it's one of those things where you have to be, so vocal and say because of their sex they can't come in. But it's just, can they represent the issues of women authentically and in the right way? In an institute which has been around for God knows how long.
What do you think?
Didn't William Hague used to be a Conservative? I mean, can you imagine William Hague sort of a few years ago being told born men are invading the Women's Institute and him just going to get over it? I mean, we'd never mind gender neutral. We're just politically neutral now. I mean, I don't follow any of our... Conservative Party isn't Conservative. The Labour Party isn't Labour. We're in a position now where nobody's looking after the people that they originally used to look after. Everybody's absolutely terrified of any serious policy on anything, any end product, any substantial changes in society. And instead we're squabbling about who gets to go in the Women's Institute and bake flat
you are so right, Andy, about that identification on both. I mean, whether you're Conservative or what you stand for, or whether you're Labour, I always have an issue. Are you for the working person in this country? Do you represent trade unions or not? At least then I would know. But you're right, it's like they have morphed into something in between. So everybody's all diluted. They're diluted.
Yeah, it's all homogenised, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just a different rosette. And briefly, I absolutely agree and stand by what Stephanie said, but we were discussing earlier that a lot of trans people are also like, they're tired of being this political football. They're like, I want to get in there. I don't care whether I get to use the change rooms in M&S. I don't care whether I get to be in the Women's Institute or whether I... Most of them don't want to be an Olympic sprinter or be an Olympic swimmer anyway. They don't care about whether people born whatever gender can be in whatever sport. And I think we have this huge squabbling where trans people don't care and the big losers are women very often.
OK, so now we get to this situation, Disney, a historically conservative organisation, there would be a lot of things that they wouldn't have been in favour in the past, but now Mickey and Minnie have gone what?
They've gone woke.
Gone woke. They've gone quite pride-orientated.
DeSantis is not happy.
Right, so... Tell us more, Andy.
Yeah, so essentially, if you've ever been to Disneyland, you know that they have parades. They're going to have an LGBT parade where, you know, the male characters aren't going to be holding hands, etc., but they're going to be having rainbow in signature, rainbow of the LGBT flag. They're going to have... Minnie's going to have a rainbow bow, and Mickey's going to have a rainbow waistcoat, and they're going to skip about and whatever else. As we've seen recently with Bud Light, which is the beer of the American blue-collar man, in many ways, or the American frat boy, has sort of a big hit because it had a trans person, Dylan Mulvaney, drinking the beer, and they said they wanted to move into a different market. That cost them dearly. There's a situation where Disney, which is one of the few brands that Democrats and Republicans generally seem to quite like, it's the one thing that American unites.
You see, you've hit the nail on the head here. All the things you've discussed in both those stories, I don't really care. Really, you know, do what you want to do. Whoever you want in your organisation. I love women. I love men. I don't mean love men. I mean, I like men. You know what I mean? I'm quite happy to go to a man's club. I'm quite happy to go to a Women's Institute meeting. Whatever. I don't really care. I'm quite happy to go to a Disney parade. But why has everything to be politicised? That's the danger, isn't it?
I think the problem is society has changed and we're very much at the brink of a new dawn and a new era. And I think it's just that we have to make sure that the boxes have been ticked and we're representing people these days. So I think when it comes to marketing, this is very much about marketing. I think for Disney over the past few years, they've made edits to cartoons, films and all this stuff. So they just want to tick that box to make sure that the LGBT community has been reflected
Can I just say, which child is going to be offended that the LGBT community hasn't been represented?
I agree.
If I took my kids to Disneyland and they're all in rainbow colours, my kids would go, oh, I love the rainbow outfits because they're cute colours.
Yes.
They wouldn't be like, I'm so pleased the rights of people in the LGBT community have been reflected in this children's
but then is William Hague not right then, generally, where he just says, suck it up, get over it, because that's the way it's all going.
But it takes a while to adjust to that, and it is about adults. But for kids, it's putting it into their subconscious from a young age about LGBT. So right now, they might think it's rainbow flags, but the older they get, they're going to realise, actually, no, the rainbow is a symbolism of LGBT.
OK. No. OK, let's move on. Times front page, and we're talking about a poorer Britain. 3% poorer than they were a year ago, and we saw those inflation figures today not getting to where they should be. Food, Stephanie, is phenomenally expensive and just rising all the time.
Energy bills. I just think this work-life balance is slowly just being eroded because people are having to tighten their purse strings. We are currently living through the worst 2-year squeeze in living standards for more than a century. And it kind of begs to ask, what's the point of working? Because you just can't enjoy your money anymore.
No, and it's the simple things. It's the milk and the bread and the cheese and the porridge. I hear today all 20% more expensive than a year ago.
You're just working to basically die because you can't enjoy your money, you can't have a good living standard. And, once you're facing poverty comes with mental health problems, issues within families, knife crime. It's just... usually I'm a positive person, but I just don't see how we're going to get any optimism of such a living standard. The politicians are promising that we are going to get through inflation and this cost of living crisis, but it's a hard problem to tackle. And it looks different from each family across this nation.
Andy, has James cleverly got the answer? Front page of The Guardian, where he says UK must not pull the shutters down on China, and it's a warning to his own party, the Conservative Party. So we may not like what China gets up to, we may not trust China, but he's saying still do business with them.
Well, absolutely. I think from a political standpoint, we're very nervous about what China's doing, playing footsie with Putin, what's going on in Taiwan, etc., etc. Head of cybersecurity for Britain, Lindy Cameron, has said that we need dramatic warnings about China as a technology superpower. But, of course, China, if we're getting cheap goods, they come from China. China is the factory of the world, the warehouse of the world. Pretty much everybody's wearing or using something that's made in China. And James Cleverly is saying, well, look, you know, if we slam a handbrake on our business with China, it's going to hit us all in a pocket when we've got no money.
So money talks. Even though I was reading a report today that it's increasingly believed that COVID originated from China and it was an experiment went wrong, no price for them to pay for killing so many people around the world and causing that
problem. No, don't even dare mention it. No politicians mention it, no global leaders mention it. There's no discussion in the EU. There's no discussion beyond talk shows like this. It's everything's forgotten about. China
it's all about
released
the money.
on the world. Whether it was deliberate or irresponsible, there's no discussion of it whatsoever.
Show us the money or the yen. Andy, Stephanie, thank you very much indeed. The guys are back in 40 minutes' time.
Right, we've been talking this morning about the anti-monarchists. The leader of Britain's largest group says they plan to protest during King Charles III's coronation parade, shouting, "Not my king."
OK, it comes... we're going to refer to a YouGov poll here. It shows that the majority of you do not think that the coronation should be funded by taxpayers. Well, all I can say is no one asked me. I do look at this and I think, so this massive piece of history, you guys don't want the state to fund it. The way you asked me why I have these sweets for, it's because I'm starting coughing again. Aircon in here.
There's your YouGov poll. It shows 51% of people saying that the British public should not be paying, the taxpayer should not be paying for the coronation. 32% thought we should, and then it's those the worst of these people who say they don't know to all these poll questions. They always annoy me. Have an opinion, have a view. Anyway, let's speak to the former royal correspondent for The Sun and the author, Charles Ray, who will certainly have a view on this. This is such a shame, all this anti-monarchy rhetoric that seems to be on the rise.
I mean, it's a great shame. I mean, we've heard that there's not going to be so many street parties. There was thousands for the Queen Jubilee, and we're down to something like 245 this year. I still think, though, that on the day we're going to see the Mall and the route to the coronation jam-packed with people who want to get a glimpse of this marvellous piece of history.
I mean, I don't know how much we are paying. I don't know, but I just accept this is the first time in how many years? 50 years or
70
75?
Plus.
Yes.
You know what? It is massively pared back. King Charles is very conscious of not being, what's the word?
But I don't want him to pare it back.
Yeah, but there's the cost of living crisis. We've just been talking about everyone's skin.
And you look who's invited.
You look who's invited. Go for it, but
you look who's invited and who's not invited. And you look, and he's got his... what relation's Fergie to him? So Andrew's his brother, so she's his
ex-sister-in-law.
Ex-sister-in-law. She's not invited. I thought, how puny, how stupid. You know, what's it going to cost to invite her? 100 quid or something. Get her in as well. There's loads of things. All this stupid penny pinching. It's just ridiculous because history, we're going to remember this for years and years and years, and you're going to do it well. Charles, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm surprised that they cut it back, but I accept Isabel's point. There's a cost of living crisis, and he does not want to be seen to be too extravagant. And so it's being pared down from what the coronation was in 1953. I still think we'll still get a half-decent spectacle. We'll get all the soldiers, we'll get the military out, we'll have all the pageantry that goes along with it and the crowning. And for a great many people in this country, this is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime chance to see this fantastic piece of history.
But Charles, I mean, you were on the royal beat for so many years, and look, we all lived through last year. We had the wonderful Platinum Jubilee and then, tragically, the state funeral in the autumn. Just give us the change that we've seen since Charles has come in, because in my memory, when Her Majesty the Queen was on the throne, we didn't have these anti-monarchy protests in the same way.
Well, we did, Isabel, occasionally.
Okay.
We had this sort of people come out and they just didn't have any impact whatsoever. I mean, Republic are going to try and get an anti-monarchy protest going on the day. They're actually selling their own T-shirts, branded T-shirts, Not My King, bright yellow T-shirts, so that they can be noticed. And they'll be standing up at Trafalgar Square, which is on the route of the Coronation. How many of them are going to turn up? I haven't got a clue. But there'll be far, far more people who will want to see the occasion than a few monarchists dressed in £14.99 T-shirts.
So what's your view of the lot that go out of their way to shout, "Not my king"?
My view quite clearly is, Eamonn, this is a democratic country. They're entitled to protest peacefully. If that's what they want to do, fine. I don't agree with it. I know thousands of others don't agree with it, but it's up to them. If that's what they want to do, how they want to spend their day, I think it's a bit churlish of them. I think they should let the occasion go, without these sort of protests. But if they want to protest, fine, protest.
Just really quickly, because we're almost out of time, but I just want to talk about this relic that the Pope has given as a coronation gift. Fascinating.
It is fascinating. The Pope has given the King 2 pieces of what was supposed to be the original cross on which Jesus Christ was crucified. Now, they're very, very tiny, and they're going to be included in the Cross of Wales, which will be held up as the procession goes into the Abbey. So it's quite fascinating that sort of history from all those many, many years ago is going to be incorporated in this piece of history as well. And this was the Cross of Wales was given to Wales, the Church of Wales, by the King to celebrate its centenary.
Charles, fabulous. Always good to get your take on things. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good man. Charles Ray, former royal correspondent for The Sun. He's also a royal author as well. Rishi Sunak plans to camp down on eco-protesters. I don't know what he plans to do about royal protesters, but we'll bring you that. We've also got the latest inflation figures. How did they fare after the weather forecast? Alex Deakin.
Morning, this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. My name's Alex Deakin, and today most of us will see some good spells of sunshine. The southwest, though, seeing more cloud and a few showers, and we do again have a brisk easterly wind generated by this chunky area of high pressure sitting over Scandinavia, and around it the winds feeding in from the North Sea. So again, these eastern coasts will be very fresh, whereas further west in the sunshine, Northern Ireland, western Scotland, feeling fairly pleasant. Those easterly winds also bringing quite a bit of cloud. A few showers this morning over southwest England. Hit and miss, but 1 or 2 heavy ones are possible here as we go through the day. They're tending to drift away. A bit more cloud at times over the Midlands and Wales. Again, the possibility of an afternoon shower. But generally, eastern England turning sunnier. Sunny spells for Scotland, Northern Ireland for most of the day. And we could again get to 18, 19 in western Scotland, whereas that east coast, with that easterly wind, 11 or 12, as I said, will feel pretty fresh. Quite a fresh night to come as well. The cloud tends to drift further away to the west, so clear spells for many. Quite a bit of cloud developing in that easterly wind over the Pennines. And temperatures again dipping where we've got clear skies and lighter winds over northern Scotland. A hint of frost certainly possible through some sheltered glens. Most towns and cities staying above freezing, but certainly a cold feel as we head through to Thursday morning. Again, for most places, Thursday looking dry and bright with sunny spells, some cloud at times over the Pennines, maybe some around the coast of northeast Scotland. Later on, the cloud is likely to increase across East Anglia and the southeast, with the chance of some wet weather moving in here on Thursday evening. Still got that brisk easterly wind, keeping things cold, 10, 11 at best here, whereas further west in the sunshine into the teens, and again western Scotland could reach 16 or 17 Celsius. The high that has been over Scandinavia drifting to the north of the UK, allowing low pressure systems and weather fronts to bring a cooler feel with more showers, certainly across England and Wales as we head into the weekend.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have. No one will be cancelled. Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
MPs pressure the Prime Minister to crack down on eco-activists as protesters plan to disrupt the London Marathon.
Good morning. It's just after 8 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 19th of April. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
So here's what's leading the news this morning. Rishi Sunak says the behaviour of protesters who disrupt sporting events is selfish and reckless as he pledges to push ahead with legislation to crack down on public order offences.
This comes as environmental groups, including Extinction Rebellion, prepare to flood the capital with 30,000 environmental activists during the London Marathon this weekend.
The Scottish First Minister is facing a growing SNP rebellion over his decision not to suspend Nicola Sturgeon. It comes after the arrest of party treasurer Colin Beattie yesterday as part of a probe into SNP finances.
Inflation fell to 10.1% last month, down from 10.4% the previous month, but food prices have hit a 45-year high. Reacting to the numbers, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has said in the last few moments the government is working to ease pressure on families and businesses.
And fragments said to be from the cross that Jesus was crucified on will be used as part of the Coronation procession. Relics will be set in a newly made Cross of Wales and were gifted to the King by Pope Francis.
And we love to hear from you throughout the course of the programme. Please do keep those thoughts coming in via Twitter, or you can email us, gbnews@gbnews.uk. We love to know where you're watching and listening from. We can give you a bit of a shout out as well. Lots of them to reflect on so far. What do they say?
Harry on inflation. Stubbornly high food inflation is being caused by greedy food manufacturers and retailers. They jump on the inflation bandwagon. They artificially ramp prices up.
There we go.
Paul says inflation is being fueled by companies profiteering off the back of UK consumers. Steve in Abingdon says, we went to a farm shop yesterday. A single red pepper was £1.25. In Tesco's, they were 50p each. Just why? Well, there's a lot.
Well, Peter in Somerton has an idea of why. He says almost all our goods are delivered using diesel HGV trucks. The price of diesel's hardly come down compared to unleaded. Perhaps it's down to transport costs, which are still very high. We'll be getting into that with Liam Halligan in just a few minutes.
OK. OK, so the Prime Minister says the behaviour of protesters who disrupt sporting events is selfish and reckless. He's pledged to push ahead with legislation to crack down on public order offences.
It comes as environmental groups, including Extinction Rebellion, prepare to flood the capital with 30,000 environmental activists during the London Marathon this weekend.
It's also FA Cup final weekend. Let's go to our political reporter, Olivia Utley, on this one. That's a heck of a policing operation, whether there were extra protests or not, Olivia.
Massive policing operation, and this has made it a lot more difficult. Extinction Rebellion itself has actually said that it doesn't plan to disrupt the London Marathon deliberately, but Just Stop Oil, which is the sort of splinter group which uses more guerrilla tactics, hasn't ruled out intervening. And either way, with 30,000 extra protesters in London on top of the thousands and thousands who'll come in as a result of the London Marathon, this is going to be a huge policing exercise. Now, Rishi Sunak has said that the people who disrupt sporting events are selfish, etc. But the only moves that he's making against it is to press ahead with the public order bill, which we heard about last year. Now, the public order bill, which is quite controversial because, of course, it limits in some ways the rights of peaceful protest. But one of the things which it would do, which would be very useful in this instance, but obviously won't come in time, is to stop slow walking protests, which is a tactic that we've seen Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil use. These protests completely hold up the traffic in London and make things really, really difficult for the police. So that's one measure which could be brought in by the public order bill. But as I say, obviously, it's not going to be brought in time for the weekend. And actually, given how controversial it is, we could see it dragging out well into the end of this year.
Last night here on GB News, Jacob Rees-Mogg clashed with an activist from Just Stop Oil about what it plans to do.
We are looking at what the climate crisis is a red light for humanity. Jacob, will you be joining us on the 24th of April at 1 p.m. for a march to end new oil and gas from Parliament Square?
No, of course I won't, because I want my constituents to have warm homes.
Climate crisis.
I want them to have warm homes and have economic prosperity.
We are already seeing crops burning in the field, Jacob, but it only gets us so far, Jacob.
This crisis isn't there. It's invented.
By whom? Who is benefiting? By me personally, yes, Jacob.
You are part of a system that wishes to frighten people into having a lower standard of living. I don't know.
Ooh, gosh. So that was a hotly contested debate last night then on Jacob Rees-Mogg. I mean, both of them have a point, don't they? In the sense that there needs to be urgent action taken on certainly they would say, and then he's arguing that you're actually going to make people have a worse standard of living.
Well, absolutely. And it is quite interesting to see that Extinction Rebellion is actually now saying it has reached some sort of compromise in saying that the spokesman said last night that they believe that people would support them. They've listened to feedback and they believe that people would support them if they don't use such extreme tactics, which is why they've decided not to intervene at the London Marathon. But of course, you have Just Stop Oil activists like that who are very firmly on the other side. Personally, I hope the London Marathon goes ahead OK, because I'm running it.
Oh, of course you are. And I gather you've got a very good time as well. So good luck with your running on Sunday.
What time do you plan?
3:30.
That's incredible. Yeah. That's like almost professional stuff. That's only an hour outside the pace of the pros, isn't it?
Just an hour.
What's the Chancellor's time, out of interest? I bet you know this. Jeremy Hunt will be running.
I actually don't know that, but I do know that Matt Hancock time is 3:50 because I was determined to beat him last year, and I did.
Good.
Right, so let's say there you are running around, you're right on time, or maybe you're going to beat your own time, and some protester jumps out in front of you and tries to glue themselves to the road. What's your reaction? Do you fall down on your knees in tears, or do you sock them in the mouth?
Yeah, I don't think I'd be quite so unbiased at that point. It would be quite tricky. I imagine I would burst into tears.
Oh, I love it. Well, I hope that doesn't happen. Look, whilst we've got you, I just want to pick your brains about this pace of investigation north of the border in Scotland. The SNP's finances absolutely being gone over with a fine-tooth comb. Yesterday we had that arrest of the Treasurer and he's been released without charge. But Hamza Yousaf had a very difficult first day addressing Holyrood yesterday and being described by Labour in Scotland as a lame duck.
Hugely difficult day. Obviously, all of this completely overshadowed his plan for the next few years in Scotland. It was quite interesting, by the way, that independence was hardly mentioned in his plan for Scotland. That seems to have been totally swept under the rug in light of all of this. He's now under lots of pressure from people within the SNP for not suspending Nicola Sturgeon. And it's thought that the SNP are now waiting for the imminent arrest of the former First Minister, which would obviously make life even more difficult for the self-confessed Nicola Sturgeon continuity candidate, Hamza Yousaf.
My goodness.
We'll
keep close eyes on any possible arrests.
We will.
Very much.
Thank you. 9 minutes past 8 now. Latest inflation figures came out an hour ago. They showed the rate fell from 10.1... No, they fell from 10.4 last month. They fell from 10.4 to 10.1, if I've got that right, yes, in a year. Reacting to the figures, the Chancellor says these numbers reaffirm what the government must continue to do in order to ease pressure on families and businesses, though it's not working so far, it has to be said. Liam Hannigan with us here. What can he do that will work?
I think it's very difficult. There's now a lot of inflation embedded in expectations. The fact that we've been in double digits for so long, inflation peaked at 11.1% in October and it's sort of yo-yoed around. We were at 10.1% during the year to January, 10.4 in February. We thought the March number, which comes out today, would go back into single digits, but it hasn't. It's still at 10.1%. And why is that happening? We're still drilling into the slew of data that the ONS has produced this morning, but here's some highlights. As I said to you when the numbers broke just after 7, Eamonn, food price inflation remains elevated, 19.1% during the year to March. So your average shopping basket is 19.1% more expensive, a fifth more expensive than it was a year ago.
You heard the messages from the public coming in there, and they're accusing manufacturers and retailers of profiteering. Is it as simple as that?
OK, I've been pointing out for a long time that wholesale food prices, the prices that farmers are getting at the gate, the prices on global markets of grain and so on, they've been plummeting. They've come down for 12 months in a row now, and yet retail food prices are accelerating upward. That's very difficult to explain. And if I was in government, I would be seeking urgent explanations from food retailers.
Somebody's making money somewhere.
And food processors. But just looking through the numbers, other interesting trends, clothing and footwear, inflation in that is actually coming down from about 8% to 7% last month. But housing, this is another huge one. The ONS sort of conflates all these issues. I really wish they wouldn't do this. They call it housing and housing services, which includes housing if you rent or if you pay a mortgage, and also the cost of your utilities. In sum, housing and housing services, what a mouthful, inflation is up in March 26.1%.
So what you're saying is you don't know if it's the bricks and mortar that is up or it is the gas or electricity or gardening.
Indeed. There are various weird overlapping definitions. It's very difficult to get a handle on these numbers. 2 bits of good news, because I don't want to be a completely dismal scientist, but I have to say, Eamonn, I'd rather be a bit gloomy and correct than, overly optimistic of what the actual reality is. But 2 bits of good news here. The first is that in March, motor fuel was actually cheaper than in March 2022. So motor fuel inflation is... The inflation is negative. It's minus 4.6%.
Is that diesel too? Because we had that viewer saying
diesel's obviously come down a lot less. Diesel's still 10, 15 pence a litre, even more in some places, more expensive. I think that's outrageous because diesel is the fuel of freight transport and so on. But another bit of good news is that there's something called the Producer Price Index, which is all about supply chain pressures, what firms have to buy to produce the goods and services that they then sell us. And producer price inflation is down very sharply. It was 12.8% during the year to February. It was 7.6% during the year to March. That is the hope we must cling on to, that we are now finally through the worst of this inflation shock.
I have to say, Jeremy Hunt also echoing your optimism. He's reiterated that the OBR think inflation will still come down by the end of the year. Do you accept that?
I think it's almost inevitable it will, because of what we call base effects. When you had massive spikes in energy prices, as we had last summer, last autumn, then unless you have a complete reversal and an escalation of the war between Russia and Ukraine, which roils global energy markets, then I think it's almost inevitable that inflation will be around 4 or 5% by the end of the year.
Liam, appreciate your analysis of all of that. Liam Halligan's our GB News economics and business editor. We go to Scotland now. Toby Maguire, our reporter there today. All happening with the SNP. Is it in meltdown? Toby, tell us more.
Hi, yes, it certainly seems that way, doesn't it? Yesterday was supposed to be a real watershed moment for Humza Yousaf. He came into Parliament hoping to share his plans, his policy priorities for the next 3 years, and some quite interesting things in there. Unfortunately, once again, overshadowed and absolutely scuppered by another arrest in this ongoing police investigation we now know as Operation Branchform. So yes, yesterday Colin Beattie, SNP Treasurer, was arrested by Police Scotland. He was held and questioned for close to 12 hours before being released without charge pending further investigation. A familiar story, obviously, after a couple of weeks ago, Peter Murrell, the former SNP Chief Executive, was arrested at his home in Glasgow, that big blue tent that we now come to recognise erected in the front garden of the house he shares with Nicola Sturgeon, and police searched that property for close to 30 hours. Now, rumours are flying around, first of all, as to who is next, and this is an ongoing police investigation, but documents are out there that show that on the accounts that are submitted to the Electoral Commission, 3 names are on those accounts as signatories. 2 of those names have already been arrested and questioned by police, one being Peter Murrell, one being Colin Beattie, and the third being Nicola Sturgeon.
Oh, there we go.
So certainly Humza Yousaf will be trying his best to plough on, but this story is far from over, running in the background.
Gosh, goodness me, the idea of Nicola Sturgeon being arrested. We'll keep close eye on that investigation. Tony Maguire, thank you very much.
Thank you. OK, so that's the developing story from Glasgow this morning on the SNP. 8:15 is the time. Let's bring you up to date with what else is happening news-wise. And the government's plans for an asylum centre in Essex will be challenged in the High Court today. Braintree District Council argues that the proposed site at RAF Wethersfield is unsuitable due to an isolated location and lack of capacity for services.
Former Cabinet Ministers say a new deal on worker sick pay is needed in order to boost the economy. Priti Patel and Sir Robert Buckland calling for tweaks to statutory sick pay. Latest figures show an all-time high of 2.5 million people off work due to long-term sickness.
And staying with medical matters, losing weight can lead to the remission of type 2 diabetes for a minimum of 5 years. The Diabetes Remission Critical Trial says following a low-calorie soup and shake diet alongside support from a nurse or dietitian can help manage blood sugar levels.
Now, the Prime Minister is flying back to Northern Ireland today to deliver the closing address at a gala dinner marking the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement.
This is a big deal. All the names are there. Tony Blair, Bill Clinton is there, George Mitchell is there, the former Irish Prime Minister, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and Dougie Beattie, all lining up there. Dougie, before we get into that and what's happening there, my friend, the inflation figures today, there's something. I mean, you have your own farm, and food inflation is something that you've been worried about for some time.
Well, I've worked on a lot of farms, put it like that, and the food inflation I've been warning about for the last year. It started off with red diesel. Before that was fertiliser costs because of what happened in Belarus. And so basically what we are seeing is input costs on farms going up and up and up. And farmers are being cut back quite hard. I mean, at this moment in time, in February, we saw most farmers here getting a cut on litres of milk, about 4 pence. Then they lost the bonus 3 pence, and they lost it again on 5 pence. So what we really now have is farmers having no investment to put back into their own feed to bring things back to life. So inflation figures on food will get much worse in the next year. They will not get better because of issues around input costs and indeed food security.
Now, Hillary Clinton is the Chancellor, Vice Chancellor of Queen's University. What was she involved in yesterday? She's got a pivotal role in all that's going on here with this conference.
Yeah, she had a women's conference yesterday. A lot of the top business women in Northern Ireland were gathered there to hear how much the Good Friday Agreement has brought prosperity to Northern Ireland, how much inclusiveness it has brought forward, and really those women, what part they played inside the 25 years of peace inside Northern Ireland. And a lot of them actually graduating here behind us in Queen's University. It was an interesting day, but did it offer anything new to modern day politics? Well, yesterday Chris Heaton-Harris, the Secretary of State, very much had the stick approach where he warned unionists if they didn't go back into government, well, it was the best way to secure the union was to go back into Stormont. And today, as you've mentioned, we have Ursula von der Leyen, we have Leo Varadkar, the Irish Premier, and we have Rishi Sunak, the PM, who will have the carrot with him. And he is basically saying to politicians here, if you go back into government, I will make this the best place in the world to do business. Many of us have read the document that is in place at this moment in time and struggle to find out how that will be, especially in around food and raw materials that are going across to the mainland in GB because of lack of haulage, and looking at how that will happen, and those raw goods will get to the production facilities in and around Birmingham.
Well, fascinating to see a business advance and a political advance, hopefully, all in one. Dougie, got to leave it there. Thank you from a sunny-looking Belfast this morning. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Do stay with us. We're going to have the latest for you at Stamford Bridge as Frank Lampard's Chelsea crashed out of the Champions League. Details in a moment.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest. Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. The time's 8:24. Still to come on today's programme. At 8:45, we'll be speaking to the last person refusing to move from a derelict housing estate that is set for demolition. He's just spent £2,000 redecorating and says he won't budge.
Yeah, but do you know why he won't budge? Because, he's not budging either. Keir Starmer. After that, we're going to be speaking to the Labour Party because Keir Starmer says that the NHS is broken. Now, get back to the man in Scotland who basically won't move out of that house. So basically, they're demolishing his estate, right?
Yeah.
And they're building these new blocks of flats and whatever. But they're saying, right, so we're going to knock down where you live at the minute and we're going to give you 40,000 quid to move out. But apartment costs 150,000 quid or whatever. So why would he take 40,000 quid? Where's he going to?
Very difficult.
He's got no alternative. So he's telling them, stick your 40,000 quid. I'm not going, if you give me a new apartment in the new apartment block, then fine, I'll do it. But it is a terrible dilemma. Imagine if that happened to you. So we're doing that at 8:45. Right, OK. Back pages of the papers, they shape up like this morning. All about Chelsea. The Mail leads with the 2-0 defeat. At home they were at Stamford Bridge to Real Madrid last night. They're out of the Champions League. And if you go to the Mirror, it reads blank Lampard, sort of pun on Frank Lampard. So he's the interim manager there. It's another heavy defeat. We think that's 4 defeats in a row there since his return to Stamford Bridge. And the Star leads with blankety Frank, despite the manager saying he won't let his players off the hook. So how does he motivate them? We got Paul Coyte to talk us through all of that. Well,
I don't know how he does motivate them. I don't know what he does now. The thing is, I'm thinking about Frank Lampard and where his stock is. So he's come in as Chelsea interim manager. It's been a disaster as when he was the Chelsea manager, then came in as Everton manager. That didn't work out. And then he gets this lifeline from Todd Bowley. Can you come in? Now we've got rid of Graham Potter. And you think, well, why would you replace Graham Potter with Frank Lampard, who's now lost 15 out of his last 18 games, 4 on the bounce. They've now lost Chelsea and completely outclassed by Real Madrid. So a year ago, they were the world champions, world club champions. And, you know, I hate the pun, but it's champs to chumps. It really is. Yeah. They could not score. They had chances. Yesterday, but completely outclassed.
We had a problem like this at Manchester United where we had a club hero, an absolute playing hero in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and no one wanted to say a bad word about him. The results weren't coming. And what do you actually do? It's like shooting Bambi, you know?
It is, but the thing is with Ollie, if you remember, he came in as interim. He was never going to be the new Manchester United manager. So when he came in as interim manager, things changed. And then you started getting wins, and then it was only once he was appointed, because there was a lot of people thinking, well, why don't you give him the job permanently? And that's when when they really earn their money, and it's almost like he got found out.
Different
and
story.
Then it didn't work out.
Different story at Man City tonight.
Completely
they face Bayern Munich tonight.
Yeah, completely different. They're at Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich aren't doing very well. You can never... I mean, you can't count out sides like Bayern Munich. So they're 3-0 up Manchester City. And for me, this is the best chance they're going to have of reaching the Champions League final. And winning the Champions League.
They get through to the semis.
Yeah, they get through to... If they get through here, then they would face Real Madrid in the semi-finals. I think they're better than Real Madrid. Just looking at Real Madrid, they're a great side, of course, but I think Manchester City are better. And then if they get through that, it's either Benfica or the two Milan sides. So if they get to the final, it should be theirs. But as someone said, you've got to take each game as it comes, Eamonn. So we'll have to see how it goes.
If I was a footballer, I can understand someone coming to me. I mean, I hope somebody would come to me and say, we've got this amazing Jeep, will you advertise it for us or whatever, some sort of lovely vehicle or whatever. Or holidays on a cruise ship.
Robin Reliant,
like that. But if you were a footballer, why would someone come and say to you, advertise our pyjamas?
Well, I don't know whether I think it's all about the love of the product, isn't it?
This is Eric Haaland, and we're going to look
Erling
Haaland. We're going to look in his pyjamas now, and they're very expensive. So he earns about 865 grand a week or so.
Yeah, it's not bad.
And this is his range of pyjamas, and they can be anything from 1,300 down to the you can get bottoms only at 452 quid.
It's nice to know you can split them, though, isn't it? You know, so you don't have to buy the set. If you just think maybe I'll buy the trousers now and I'll save up for the top. Yeah,
that might be good. So he's got a whole range, and there's more with that. So
he goes everywhere in his pajamas.
I wonder.
Yeah, loves his pajamas.
Why?
Yeah, that's it. He goes everywhere in them. He goes to restaurants. He's on flights everywhere. But the thing is, if they're expensive and they're designer, who cares whether it's pyjamas? It looks fantastic, and he looks marvellous in them, doesn't he?
You know what? What a player that man is. I mean, he just touches the ball, it's in the back of the net.
You know what? If you're a supporter of Manchester City, you don't care what he wears.
Yeah.
You don't care. Yeah. You know, if he wants to wear pyjamas to whatever he does, he can wear pyjamas and sleep on the pitch as far as he's concerned, as long as he can score goals, which he does.
If you've ever bought yourself a £1,500 pair of pyjamas, let us know this morning. Send us a picture.
And I'd like to borrow your money. So,
Yeah. Do you wear pyjamas in bed?
I'm not a pyjama man myself. I'm not a full pyjama. No, not a full pyjama, not the full set. You know, it all depends what I feel like. I don't think my house actually costs that much, let alone just the pyjamas.
No.
Are you a pyjama man yourself, Eamonn?
I'm a bit like you.
Oh, yeah, you're really? OK.
I feel the heat very easily. I do. I need a fan on me or something.
Yes,
somebody fanning me.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about Emma Raducanu.
He's got one of those as well, by the way. Emma Raducanu, oh dear. Now, she's like the Frank Lampard of tennis, isn't she? It really isn't going so well for Emma. Playing on clay. She didn't play in the Billie Jean King Cup because she wanted to concentrate on the clay court Stuttgart Open. And she lost to Yelena Ostapenko, who is a former French Open winner, which, of course, is played on clay. 6-2, 6-1.
OK.
Not very good.
Here's an interesting story.
Yes.
So, ultra-marathons, so they're about 50 miles long.
Very long, yep.
Right. So, I mean, you could get lost. I mean, you can't line the whole 50-mile course, I suppose.
Well, the thing is, there are ultra-marathon runners. They run... You get some people that run... I know someone run for 24-hour races, the 100-mile races. Josiah Zakreski, her name is. She finished third in the 2023 GB Ultra race. It's from Manchester to Liverpool, so 50-mile run. But...
Well done, her.
It was marvellous. I mean, she's got to be happy with the third place. She's one of our finest runners. Although, if you say well done, one of the miles that she did, she managed to actually do 1 mile, and it was clocked because they're GPS, as they are in the London Marathon at the weekend as well. She did 1 mile in 1 minute 40 seconds, which, considering the men's mile record, is probably just under 3 minutes and 40. 1 minute 40 is kind of questionable.
She was flying, was she?
She was either flying or she took a car.
And have they been able to prove this?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious when you see that she's managed to do it in 1 minute 40. So there's been questions of her. Her friend said she felt sick and sorry for any upset. Now, I don't really know what that means, apart from the fact
She's sick because she was caught on.
I think she was sick. She was caught doing it in 1 minute 40. So it's a bit of a disaster for her. But, you know, there was another one. There was the Great Island Run. This happened at the weekend. Now, this is another huge... This is a 10K race, Dublin's Phoenix Park, and... It even incorporates the National Road Championships.
Yes.
But the thing is, all these people were coming through and they're going, I've broken my personal best. I've done an amazing run. And it was only afterwards they realised that the actual 10K, they'd measured it 8.5. So there was someone that was actually going, right, this is the way you go around the park. They followed that, and they sent them the wrong way round. They missed out a lap. So everybody, and they've had to call it null and void. So the winner
couldn't believe they were breaking the records, except they weren't.
I know, look at the speed I've done. I've done amazingly. And everybody's crossing the line. It's because they were 1.5k out. They didn't even run anywhere near that.
Oh, well, I'm sorry about that, mate.
I know.
They told me we had 10 minutes to talk, but they lied to me. It was only 6.5. So
Is it? That's really...
I'll go now.
Okay.
Paul Coit there, and
So I
that's
went
your
extra
sports
fast.
roundup. Thank you very much indeed, my friend.
Pleasure.
I think they decided to cut it short after all that talk of pyjamas. I could see the nation going, oh, no. Or
Do you
maybe
wear
everybody was
pyjamas
in
in
agreement.
bed?
I'm not going there.
Why not?
I'm going to
Well, we've
retain my
admitted,
dignity.
we have admitted we like flesh on flesh.
I like a nightie.
You like a nightie?
Yeah.
Winciette.
Oh, gosh,
Yes, to your
here we
ankles?
go. I knew I shouldn't answer. Let's move on. Move on, please. See you soon, Paul.
Well, stay with us as we ask why Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, will not be attending the King's coronation. I mean, the thing is, she didn't get an invite. Didn't get an invite at all. I do hear she's invited to the after party, though, as well. And Andy Jones and Stephanie Tetchy will go through the papers and tell you the whole story next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are going through the papers one last time this morning, joined by the writer Andy Jones and the journalist Stephanie Tetchy. Thank you for staying with us. Steph, let's start with you. We were just trailing that before the break there, talking about Fergie being, well, not included in the invite list for the coronation.
This is Sarah, not Alex. We just want to point that out. Right.
Maybe Alex Ferguson might be there. I thought this was a big snub from King Charles not inviting Fergie because, you know, she famously had a really close relationship with the Queen, has her corgis. Is it corgis? Yeah. And so she was snubbed off the list of attendees that will be attending the coronation at Westminster Abbey. But The Sun have an exclusive saying that she will, though, attend the ball for the Windsor Castle coronation concert afterwards, which I think is nice.
When you look at all the people who Charles has no contact or relation with at all, and they're invited because they sort of have to have them there and whatever it is. But, I mean, they have to have been close.
Yeah, but...
Maybe because she was close to his ex-wife. Maybe that's why she was invited.
But I do think it's a snub because it's, you know, it's like your brother's ex-wife and she's the mother of, you know, Beatrice and Eugenie.
And she's had a part in the whole history of the family, rightly or wrongly.
I feel like it feels more of a personal attack, but, you know, she's humble enough to accept the invitation to go to the concert afterwards. So.
You say she had a close relationship with the Queen, though. Yeah. I mean, she was not invited to Christmases for years.
Well,
but then they all kissed and made up at the end. Yeah, and that, she's got the dogs.
Yeah,
she's got the Queen's dogs.
Yeah, so I think that was more of the Duke of Edinburgh, though, who kind of put that distance between Fergie and the family.
She's another royal that's very good crack.
Who?
Fergie.
In what way?
She's just very personable. She's incredibly personable.
And this is what the royal family needs. And I'm like, if Meghan's turned down the invitation, give it to Fergie. Let her take her spot.
Okay, yeah, there's a space free. Andy, what's this about Greggs in a sausage roll crime ban plea?
Well, as we know, Greggs is all about sex, drugs and sausage rolls. And they've applied for a late licence in Leicester Square, which is the busiest part of London of a Friday, Saturday night. And they've been told they cannot have this late licence because it will cause too much trouble. But Greggs are quite reasonably saying they're going to hire private security. Is it more dangerous? Is there more punch-ups likely in a Greggs than any kebab shop or fish and chip shop or any other takeaway? And also, with Greggs, the product's ready to go. It's not like a kebab shop where you get sort of drunks ordering something and there's rows because it takes ages to order and you stood there 15 minutes for your kebab. And also, I will say, it's difficult to have a punch-up if you've got a steak bake in your hand.
Yes, it would be.
Unless it's over the steak bake.
You can't see any consistency about that sort of ruling.
No, and also it's a British business.
Yeah.
British-made business, going back to the British taxpayer, loads of outlets across the UK. It's universally popular. I don't care whether you're worth millions or pennies. Everyone loves a Greggs. And also, it's a good way of soaking up the booze and the alcohol. It comes in a paper bag, pretty low mess. I don't know what the problem is. I don't know whether they
no, we don't know what the problem is. Give Greggs a break on that one. There we go. Now, Stephanie, cassettes. Cassettes. I'm older than all of you, and they sort of transformed my life. And the reason they transformed my life is when you got a cassette, they weren't the easiest things to use, and they snapped quite a lot. But they did away with reel tapes, and then you got cassettes. And the main thing they were used for was recording the Radio 1 top 40 or
absolutely.
We used to do
that.
And to cut off before the DJ spoke.
And I noticed you're doing two fingers because you had to press play and record at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that they're having a resurgence because I've actually been playing my cassettes recently. It takes me back to when I was a teenager and I used to go raves and they'll give tapes out at the end of the night. But they are, you know, enjoying a good resurgence. At the moment, they're facing sales of 195,000 in a year, which is the most it's been since 2003.
Are these blank ones or pre-recorded?
No, these are pre-recorded. And funnily enough, it hasn't been like music of yesterday, where the highest sales have gone to the Arctic Monkeys and also Harry Styles for his album Harry's House. So those are what people have been buying cassettes on recently. But I just love cassettes. I think they just take me back to that era.
Well, they take you back. They take you back in time, but they're rubbish.
No, they're not.
They're rubbish. The sound quality's rubbish. What
no,
about the machine?
I find them very crisp.
Yeah, you have to rewind it again.
You put a CD down, you put a cassette down, and they don't compare.
No, I like them, and then putting them into a Walkman as well. I would actually buy a Walkman now.
So they still sell Walkmans?
Yeah, they do, but you might have to go on eBay or Amazon. They are available.
Are they new Walkmans or are they second-hand Walkmans?
Second-hand ones.
Oh.
I was going to say, you can get the cassettes, you can't get anything to play it on. So you just hold it to your ear and sing the song yourself.
Well, the thing you used to have to do was put your pen and
wind
wind them. Yeah, to try and tighten them.
When you can make a playlist and you can share that with your friends, why bother with the physical cassette other than for nostalgia?
I think she's deliberately bothering because she likes to get physical.
I like physical things. I think we've just become too much of a society that's all about digital things now, and I just like to hold things. I like to hold a paper.
Do you remember that song from Olivia Newton-Baum? Let's get physical. Yeah, I like the bit. I wanna get animal. Let me hear your body talk. Your body talk.
Oh gosh,
stars in the eyes. To the 80s. Yeah. So cassettes, they're on their way back. Did they? But then some people, they never went out. Some people have VHS cassettes and
I had a little
things
necklace
like
with a cassette on at one point.
Did you?
Yeah, it was retro, cool.
And they had earrings as
when
well.
I was younger. What can I say?
There's value
I've just
in
seen
old things.
the next two stories, one about cats and one about octopuses. You take your pick, Andy, but yours is fat cats.
Yeah, cancel fat cats. So we were talking about cost of living crisis all the time on this show, and Daily Mail has done a roundup of the cancels fattest cats. I'm all for paying the money to get the better people, but had an unnamed Guildford employees on £600,000 a year, two Sunderland employees at the local city council. Both make the top 20. One's on almost £600,000 a year, another one's on nearly £300,000 a year. When you look at Sunderland itself, which I believe is broadly a Labour council, they've had the average salary there is about £32,000. I was reading a story in the Sunderland Echo today that said half of Sunderland residents are struggling basic food bills and having to go to food banks. A lot of social disorder there. I think they had an e-scooter system that they've had to abandon because it's been vandalised. And you think, yes, people should be paid a good salary for doing tough jobs. Yes, we want the best people coming to the public sector. But 600 grand a year in a region where you're earning 20 times more the average salary, and you're certainly not living in the local neighbourhoods of Sunderland either, I'd assume, on that kind of money, it creates a distance. We're at a point where...
a distance between professions like doctors and NHS dentists and the Prime Minister even doing that job as well. It's just amazing that you can run a local council and you can get paid more than the person who runs the country.
Absolutely. It's insane. And pay is all over the place with councils. Croydon Council has been destroying itself for an awful long time. Joe Negroni there got a payoff of £470,000, and yet Croydon Council owes £1.6 billion in debt. That's one council. It's gone bankrupt. Got payoff, that's not even a salary, a payoff of 470 grand for what you consider absolute incompetence.
But one way the central government doesn't discourage these sort of payments is that when you say they get paid £600,000, which is a huge amount, but they will be left after tax with half of that. They'll get £300,000, which is still a huge amount, it has to be said. But you can see how central government's rubbing their hands and saying, we'll have all of that.
Easily.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those ones, like, these people don't have no one that they have to that can hold them to this kind of salary. And to be honest, while most people are on the poverty line, they're going to just keep on enjoying increasements of wages.
Now, Stephanie's got a story here from the Mail, and it's an animal cruelty story. Whatever way you want. Do you know, apparently the most intelligent creature on Earth is an octopus.
No way.
No, I'll tell you. And do you know why it is?
Why?
Because when aliens invaded the world, I'm telling you, do you know what they did, Isabel?
What did they do,
dropped
Eamonn?
into the sea and they set up a new world under the sea. And the creatures with the big... I'm telling you, the creatures with the biggest brains are octopuses. And it's just that we haven't worked out a way to talk to them yet. But apparently these are really smart. So this man takes one that's how long, how big?
7 foot.
And eats it.
Yes, he eats it. Ziggy Austin.
This is the most intelligent creature on the planet.
In
and
Devon, this was.
Well,
is that right?
Most people eat octopus, though.
But it's rubbery. It's like, you might as well take the tire of my car and boil it.
No, when I'm in the south of France, I love
If it's done
octopus.
properly,
and
it's melts in the mouth.
Yeah.
Chili and salt.
Well,
but it's like...
No, if it's overcooked
it doesn't melt in the mouth.
Then it's rubbery. But if it's very delicate...
Before,
squid,
Yes.
Oh, good. I thought you had.
But by the way, just to clarify...
They have very big tentacles, don't they? And then when you put... Are you happy with a tentacle in your mouth?
Oh, I'm not going to answer that.
Oh, it's delicious. It's very nice when cooked properly. I don't know whether this guy finding a dead octopus that's massive, how long that will keep in the fridge freezer. Yeah. I don't know what his wife or kids thought
That's
about it.
That's why he cooked it in a... What did he cook it in?
Teriyaki sauce, and he served it with stir-fried veg.
That sounds
But
delicious.
meanwhile, this was trying to make contact with the planet in a different galaxy.
He found it and it was already dead.
Yeah, but it got out of the water to speak
What's the
to the
equivalent
aliens.
of roadkill on the beach?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Roadkill.
They frighten me.
Beach dead.
I just get scared that they can stick on your face and just won't move.
Should we talk about Wagatha Christie one last time? Because we talked about it in the 6 o'clock, and I thought this was a really interesting story. People can't seem to get enough of that fight between the two wags.
Rebecca Vardy, Colin Rooney.
It's the court case that keeps on giving. Well, The Sun have an exclusive that Becky Vardy has trademarked the term Wagatha Christie. It's quite a shrewd move from her because, you know, we've had the musical, we've had a TV drama about it. Colleen is working on a documentary with Disney. So it's time that Rebecca won something because, as we know, she's going to be forking out £1.3 million for the case towards Colleen. But what she's done this is so if anyone uses the terms in terms of cups, T-shirts or for broadcasting stuff, they would have to go to her for permission.
There you go.
Yeah,
I just wondered where you went. Can we show the octopus again, Daniel? Or Jonathan, sorry, can we put the octopus picture up again if possible? Just, we're working on it. Nothing ever happens like that here. Oh, there it is.
There.
I just want to say, did you ask for permission to style your outfit on that octopus? Because if you see Stephanie now in the flesh, just come through to her.
We're matching.
There you are, matching.
I am a style queen, so obviously I'm going to match with the octopus.
Octopussy yourself this morning. Thank you very much indeed, Stephanie Tetchy. Andy Jones, a pleasure.
No problem.
Come back and see us again.
Thank
you
you.
very much. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, with the time at 8:48, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
It's actually 8:48, nearly 8:49.
What did I say?
8:40. You're 8 minutes behind, just in case somebody's going out to catch the 9 o'clock bus or so. These are pictures of people happily out shopping. Did I ever tell you I worked in Primark?
You did, yeah. You were a manager, weren't you?
Yeah, trainee manager.
Oh, right.
But anyway, inflation has dropped to 10.1% last month. That's the first dip since last August. And it follows a 10.4% figure in February, which saw increased food prices. We're still having increased food prices as well. Hugely, nearly 20% increased food prices.
Former SNP leadership contender Kate Forbes says the party is facing a critical moment and needs urgent action. Yesterday, Colin Beattie became the second person to be questioned by detectives as part of a probe into the party's finances.
Some parts of England are becoming dental deserts due to the NHS dental shortage. That's according to the Liberal Democrats, who say some areas have 3,000 people per one NHS dentist.
And losing weight can lead to the remission of type 2 diabetes for a minimum of 5 years. Diabetes Remission Critical Trial says following a low-calorie soup and shake diet alongside support from a nurse or dietitian can help manage blood sugar levels and maintain weight loss.
See, Isabel, I always look at you and I think you have a beautiful pair. Let me see, smile to me, smile. Those teeth, are they all your own?
Yeah.
Right. But you see, can you imagine not having a dentist? 3,000 people sharing one dentist. That'd be an area of people just full of black teeth and awfulness and spaces there and whatever.
Horror stories, don't you?
It was ghastly. It's absolutely ghastly that people can't. You see, why is dental care regarded as different than any other type of care? I mean, if you cut your finger or you did something or bits of you were falling off, you'd be able to go to a hospital and somebody would treat you. But you can't go and say, look at all my teeth, they're black and they're falling out. Can I have someone to fix these?
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
It's regarded as a privilege, isn't it?
It's increasingly hard for people to get dentistry, that is for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yours always been good, your teeth?
I have had them straightened, yeah.
Oh, have you?
I had train tracks, I had all sorts of dentistry as a child, yeah.
I do often look at you and I think they're pretty darn perfect.
Thank you. I've still got a permanent retainer on my bottom teeth.
And do you take them out at night?
No, I leave it in there permanently. For life.
Very good. Very, very good.
Right, we're talking about the National Lottery now. They are, of course, famous for supporting good causes.
Yes, but a GBNews investigation, this will get you talking anyway. It revealed that the National Lottery Heritage Fund has been used to support political causes, including a speech that described Conservative politicians as...
well, as devils. Charlie Peters has been looking into this and has this exclusive report for you.
What would you do with six-figure lottery winnings? It's a question lots of Britons dream about answering. But for a collection of activists, that dream became a reality in 2021 when the National Lottery Heritage Fund awarded almost £250,000 to a group called 81 Acts of Exuberant Defiance. The social change project was launched with support from campaign group the Isabel Initiative to mark the 1981 Brixton riots. The money has helped the group put on 81 different events, which call on people to resist the whitening of our history. But GB News can reveal that some of the lottery funding has gone towards supporting a political speech by an activist, breaching the fund's rules. Campaigner Stafford Scott gave a talk at a Brixton venue earlier this month, which accused the royal family of being involved in slavery. He slammed the Met as a gang executing black kids and said the government's crackdown on gangs was fascism. Scott used his lottery-funded talk to describe Boris Johnson and other politicians as devils.
And this man, this devil, you know Mopac, right? You need to know them are devil. They are devils, and I'm going to show you that they're devils. This woman's called Sophie Linden. She's the Deputy Mayor for Policing. Right now, right, she a devil.
Tory MP Brendan Clark-Smith said that lottery funding should not be used to promote political causes.
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? I think when people play the lottery, they want to see that money go into good causes, and a lot of it does, of course, and we want to see that spent in our communities properly. What we don't want to see it being used for is these political causes, things that actually cause more tension in the community, and I think that's why it's really, really important not just to look at the applications, but the organisations as well, to make sure that this doesn't happen in future.
The National Lottery Heritage Fund said they do not define heritage. They leave it up to applicants to make their own understanding of what it is. Do you think that this talk that was funded £4,000 counts as heritage?
Well, heritage can mean a lot of things, as we've said there, but I don't think many people would call this heritage at all. And as I said, we want that money to be spent properly. I think a lot of people feel very let down, certainly seeing some of the comments that have been made and where that money is going. But I think this is a wider problem that we've got here. I mean, we have charities, we have community interest companies that really are vehicles for some quite nasty political views. And this is not really where money should be going. It's not in the spirit of the sector. And I think something needs to be done about it.
A National Lottery Heritage Fund spokesperson said that its funding should not be used to promote political beliefs, adding that it had been in touch with the Isabel Initiative to discuss how the project would be delivered. They say that your odds of winning the lottery are 1 in 45 million. But it seems that the chances of your £1 going towards funding political activists is much higher. Charlie Peters, GB News, Brixton.
A lot of you reacting to that and just saying that you finished with the lottery after seeing that. So very interesting report and investigation there. As regards the protesters protesting at the marathon, the possibility of that, Phil says this shows just how selfish and moronic these people are. Thousands of folk have trained for months to raise millions for good causes. There should be harsher sentencing all round for these idiots, as Phil calls them. Your views very welcome. And coming up, we're going to have more on Rishi Sunak's plans to clamp down on eco-protesters. But first, let's have a look at your forecast. Alex Deacon with the weather picture.
Morning, this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. My name's Alex Deacon, and today most of us will see some good spells of sunshine. The southwest, though, seeing more cloud and a few showers, and we do again have a brisk easterly wind generated by this chunky area of high pressure sitting over Scandinavia, and around it the wind's feeding in from the North Sea. So again, these eastern coasts will be very fresh, whereas further west in the sunshine, Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, feeling fairly pleasant. Those easterly winds also bringing in quite a bit of cloud. A few showers this morning over southwest England. Hit and miss, but one or two heavy ones are possible here as we go through the day. They're tending to drift away. A bit more cloud at times over the Midlands and Wales. Again, the possibility of an afternoon shower, but generally eastern England turning sunnier. Sunny spells for Scotland, Northern Ireland for most of the day, and we could again get to 18, 19 in Western Scotland, whereas that east coast with that easterly wind 11 or 12, as I said, will feel pretty fresh. Quite a fresh night to come as well. The cloud tends to drift further away to the west, so clear spells for many. Quite a bit of cloud developing in that easterly wind over the Pennines. And temperatures again dipping where we've got clear skies and lighter winds over northern Scotland. A hint of frost certainly possible through some sheltered glens. Most towns and cities staying above freezing, but certainly a cold feel as we head through to Thursday morning. Again, for most places, Thursday looking dry and bright with sunny spells, some cloud at times over the Pennines, maybe some around the coasts of northeast Scotland. Later on, the cloud is likely to increase across East Anglia and the southeast, with the chance of some wet weather moving in here on Thursday evening. Still got that brisk easterly wind, keeping things cold, 10, 11 at best here, whereas further west in the sunshine into the teens, and again western Scotland could reach 16 or 17 Celsius. The high that has been over Scandinavia drifting to the north of the UK, allowing low pressure systems and weather fronts to bring a cooler feel with more showers, certainly across England and Wales as we head into
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have.
No one will be cancelled.
Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
MPs put pressure on the Prime Minister to crack down on eco-activists as protesters plan to disrupt the London Marathon.
Hello there, very good morning to you. The time, 9:01, Wednesday, the 19th of April. You're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Rishi Sunak says the behaviour of protesters who disrupt sporting events is selfish and reckless as he pledges to push ahead with legislation to crack down on public order offences.
It comes as environmental groups, including Extinction Rebellion, prepare to flood the capital with 30,000 environmental activists during the London Marathon and the FA Cup semi-finals this weekend.
The Scottish First Minister is facing a growing SNP rebellion over his decision not to suspend Nicola Sturgeon. It comes after the arrest of party treasurer Colin Beattie yesterday as part of a probe into their finances.
Inflation fell to 10.1% last month, down from 10.4% in February, but food prices have hit a 45-year high. Reacting to the numbers, the Chancellor says the government is working to ease pressure on families and businesses.
And fragments said to be from the cross that Jesus was crucified on will be used as part of the Coronation procession. The relics will be set in a newly made Cross of Wales and were gifted to the King by Pope Francis.
So many things you're talking about today. The coronation itself. Terry says respect for royals died with the late Queen. Malcolm in Carlisle, good morning, Malcolm, says if the anti-monarchists feel so strongly, instead of protesting, perhaps they should refuse to take the bank holiday and go to work, or more likely work from home, if they even work at all. So we off the Monday?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's something anyway.
2 bank holiday weekends in a row, Eamonn.
Yeah. Jason says we should be proud of this event. I'm sick of all these moaners protesting about everything. I always say that. Who is it that wakes up in the morning, first thing they think of is, I've got something to protest about, something to complain about, whether what pronoun is used to describe me.
Don't remind me.
If the king, if Charles is going to be king in 2 weeks' time, you know, that they have got nothing obviously going on in their lives, that they just think of all these things first. Let us know your views on that.
So the Prime Minister says the behaviour of protesters who disrupt sporting events is selfish and reckless, as he pledges to push ahead with legislation to crack down on public order offences.
Now, this comes as environmental groups, including Extinction Rebellion, prepare to flood the capital with 30,000 environmental activists, and they want to particularly target the London Marathon. That's going to happen on Sunday, on Saturday and Sunday, both FA Cup semi-finals at Wembley.
Well, joining us this morning is the assistant editor of The Spectator, Cindy Yu. And look, Cindy, the Prime Minister has to be very mindful of the importance of the right to protest. It's enshrined and revered in this country. And yet we're all getting sick to death, aren't we, of this kind of mission creep of these protesters into not only disrupting people getting to work, but now sporting events, every single one.
Yes, absolutely. And this weekend is not going to be the final thing we hear from them either, because these protesters say that if the government doesn't agree to their demands on not opening new fossil fuel projects or having a citizens' assembly, they're going to be continuing the protest, continuing the disruption in the weeks to come. I think what's interesting, though, is that it seems like Extinction Rebellion, which we've heard about so much over the last few years, they seem to have become the moderate wing. And the snooker problem, you know, the Van Gogh soup incidents, all of that comes from an even more extreme group called Just Stop Oil, who have not renounced any disruption, whereas Extinction Rebellion says...
This is a tactical thing, isn't it, now, because Extinction Rebellion may realise that if they're more moderate in their approach, people will come along and be more sympathetic towards them.
Exactly. I mean, I think most people are concerned about climate change, but most people also just want to get to work without having someone glued to their tube. So I think Extinction Rebellion is now starting to realise this is the way to do to get more people on side.
What would the public order bill change in relation to what we saw at the Grand National, at the World Snooker Championships, and indeed possible disruption at the marathon at the weekend?
So very much in the air at the moment, and it's so important to get this legislation right because, as you say, Isabel, you know, the right to protest is very important in this country, and a rush through legislation like this could lead to, you know, at one point journalists were not protected in the bill. So the Lords is looking at it at the moment, and it seems like they're causing some problems for the government in pushing through what they want to push through.
Well, when you come back, we're going to play a clip from Jacob Rees-Mogg's programme last night with a guy called Sean Irish. It's almost like a made-up name. My name's Sean, and I'm Irish.
It's a good one to remember. Irish. Stop it, you.
Yeah, no, but it is interesting. But anyway, that will make your blood boil. Right now, we're going to the Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary. We welcome to the programme again Peter Kyle. Peter, good to see you. Or maybe not. Or maybe not. Are you there, Peter? Hello. He is there. He's in the dark, but he is there. He is there. Peter, it's a big day in Belfast again today, isn't it?
It really is, and it's great to be here in Queen's University, Belfast. We're celebrating here, obviously, the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, that historic moment. People seem to be focusing on the political challenges we have in Stormont at the moment, but don't forget that 25 years ago, the Good Friday Agreement delivered peace. It ended armed civil conflict here in Northern Ireland, and it's been incredibly successful. It's been an enduring peace. Of course, the politics has been harder to achieve, and some of the institutions set up by the Good Friday Agreement are not up and running at the moment. That's something that perhaps we'll talk about, but we should never forget the achievements that were delivered by that fantastic generation 25 years ago.
Everybody watching would probably agree, and, you know, fingers crossed that power sharing can be restored in Northern Ireland. Whilst we've got you, I want to ask you, Peter Carl, about an interview that Sir Keir Starmer's given to the Daily Telegraph about the state of the NHS. He's declared it broken. Well, you know, no prizes for figuring that out. We're all living through it, aren't we? But look, I guess we just point to what's happening in Wales. This is how the NHS is run under Labour, and they're not doing much better. In fact, their cancer figures are at record worst performance levels.
What we saw in Wales is that when you have a UK Labour government in the UK government in Westminster and there in Wales, it delivers huge outcomes for people. We saw that through the 13 years of the last Labour government, where health outcomes right across all parts of the United Kingdom increased. We actually overtook the United States of America for life expectancy. We've fallen behind them again. Some of these key metrics that we judge our overall success for delivering health as a country, we are really failing. That's why Keir has taken the difficult decision to say that our system is broken. We don't like to admit that our NHS is broken because it's a national treasure, it's a key institution of our country, and for us in the Labour Party, one of our key achievements in power because we created it. But right now, we've got to rethink the way we move forward with the NHS. There are lots of tools that we have in our armoury. Firstly, we need to get the basics right of getting the workforce the challenge is fixed. We're going to do that by doubling the number of training places. We'll train 7,500 doctors, 10,000 nurses, fully funded by cancelling the non-dom status, that tax break for the top 1%. Yes. And then at the other side, we will do things like reintroduce targeted and focused use of targets, because I think patients have the right to know that they will get cancer treatment within a certain time. They can see, they can get through A&E quickly. But also, we found out just today that many people are waiting an hour and a half just to have the 999 call answered. That's not just to get the ambulance, that's to get the call answered.
Peter,
so
Peter, at the end of the day, I mean, it's all very admirable what you're saying, and no one's going to disagree that they would want those facilities there, but they cost, everything costs. How are you going to fund it all?
Well, as I've just said, you know, all of our policy announcements and our plans on things like tackling crime and tackling the NHS workforce crisis are fully funded and fully costed. You know, so the key essential challenge for the NHS, something which is the first hurdle we have to overcome before we can move on to others, is tackling the staffing crisis that's infected poor performance right across the NHS. We will do that by cancelling the non-dom tax status,
yes,
so that tax break for the top.
We have heard that non-dom
expansion in workforce in history.
Yeah, look, we have heard that argument many times from Labour that money that you reckon you'd recoup from cutting that non-dom loophole, as you see it, has been spent many times over. But you talk about all of these things being fully funded. This isn't what the government say. They say that if Labour was serious about supporting the NHS, they'd scrap the idea for unfunded £15 billion top-down restructuring of GPs that neither patients nor doctors want and would inevitably result in widespread industrial action increased on what we're already seeing.
Simply untrue. And just to clarify, there are two things that we will spend the non-dom tax break on, and that is solving the staffing crisis in the NHS, and then secondly, giving food for preschool food for primary school students across the country, so kids aren't going to school hungry. They're the two things, and the only two things, that we will use the non-dom tax status cancellation for. The government are plucking figures out of the air, but let's look at the facts. that they have wasted billions of pounds in reorganisation. They have done 3 top-down reorganisations in their 13 years. The Landsley reforms, which took all strategic thinking out of the NHS, which plunged our NHS into poor performance and inward-facing organisational changes that delivered no outcomes for patients. That cost £8 billion to deliver. £8 billion taken away from frontline health services just simply to move around the management within the NHS. That was this Conservative government in the last 13 years, and they have not focused on patient needs since. We want to focus on the things that will improve patient experience. We're going to do so by, of course, tackling the staffing crisis. We will use focused targets in order to make sure that patients get the treatment they need when they do, and access to primary care, those GPs that they need to see in their communities, because billions of pounds are being wasted, over £1.5 billion, wasted in A&E attendees that could be seen by their GP. We want to fix this system, and we also want to use all of the capacity wherever it is, in the voluntary sector, in the private sector, bring it in and use it strategically. These are the tools we have at our disposal. Okay. These are the things we will use as a Labour government. We did it before, and it needs to be done again.
There's so much we want to talk to you about, and I know that Sir Keir Starmer's proposing bringing back these neighbourhood health services. A lot of people would describe them as sort of a rehash of cottage hospitals that, of course, were pretty much closed all under Tony Blair. But we have to talk about something else before we let you go, and that is this top story for us this morning. This is the way that eco-protesters are being punished. Should we see tougher penalties for them? The Prime Minister keen to press ahead with his public order bill.
Well, my first message is to the protesters themselves, and that's that the action that you've been taking in recent times is doing huge damage to the cause of selling the need to transition to a zero-carbon economy. It is not working. Secondly, if you do interrupt these sorts of sporting events, then of course you need to face the full force of the law and needs to be enforced. We believe that the law already exists. There are public order laws. We need to make sure that the police are resourced and that they are working in tandem with all enforcement agencies so that we can make sure we keep these sporting events functioning properly. And then finally, the government has, over the last few years, called repeatedly for new measures to tackle some of these issues. We know that focusing on strident measures to have a row in Parliament is not delivering the change we need, because think of all the measures that Priti Patel brought in, all of the measures that Suella Braverman has brought in. None of them seem to be working. We need to get the essentials right of policing these sorts of events and making sure that we keep the people who are competing safe. I am really worried that people who are not professional sports people, who make the majority of the people up who are competing in the marathon this weekend, we need to make sure that they are kept safe, because invading the course could put them in harm's way, and we do not want that to happen.
Peter, you think you got problems in England. There you are in Belfast this morning. We've got a health service. We haven't got a government that's paying out the funding for it. I mean, it is complete chaos, absolutely. You're in the presence of greatness there, the Clintons, Tony Blair. There's so many people there. But the principal one, the chief negotiator of all, the guru of negotiators, George Mitchell, I think I'd have a word with him about getting the DUP back into government. Will you be able to rub shoulders and talk about local politics while you're there?
Eamonn, I've been here for a few days now with these people, and you put it very, very well. I have been doing everything I can to have conversations. I had a wonderful conversation with George Mitchell. He gave one of the most powerful speeches that I've ever heard, actually one of the most emotional speeches as well, because he's not a well man, but he has travelled over here, and he gave a speech the other day where he spent a lot of time detailing all of the learning and the lessons that he had from that crucial period leading up to the Good Friday Agreement. The key thing is that, I mean, I think that there's a lot of star power in Belfast right now here at Queen's University, but two big areas of it. Firstly, the deal itself has a star power because of what it achieved. And the people who delivered it, they have a star power as well. But what we need to do, and my generation of politicians, is learn those lessons. And I think that we have something that they didn't, which made them even more special, because we have the handbook that they wrote. The question is whether we'll use it. The handbook says, and George Mitchell says, get into the room and never leave it. Do what it takes to build relationships. Persist with discussions. Encourage people not to be, as he says in his words, don't be 100%ers. Everybody needs to give something, and then you need to build the rapport to do it. Secondly, the relationship between the UK government and the Irish government needs to be much stronger. It needs to be much more coordinated and instinctive. And then thirdly, we've got to get back to the role where the UK government is the honest broker for Northern Ireland, and it doesn't disrupt politics in Northern Ireland, because that's fundamentally what led the DUP to coming out in the first place. And in order to get them across the line, we need to make sure that we're a partner to Northern Ireland and not a disruptive influencer.
Well observed, well remembered. Good luck. Enjoy your stay. Enjoy the day ahead. Peter Kyle, who's the Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, coming up at 9:30, To the Point with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. What are you dishing up today?
Morning.
Good morning. More of that on the inflation, really. It's very disturbing, isn't it? This idea that food and drink has gone up nearly 20%, even though the prices that the supermarkets are buying the food for is going down. That needs answering. I think that's outrageous.
They've got to call those supermarket bosses in. The Prime Minister's got to have a word with them. It's a cartel, isn't it?
It is. It's all. Well, we're probably not allowed to call it that.
But we just did.
But
and we're not withdrawing.
In terms of the consumers, we're getting stitched up at the moment.
Yeah.
And we're feeling it in our gas and electricity bills. We're feeling it. The petrol pump's coming down a bit. So we're going to be looking at this with Liam Halligan. And also we're going to be talking to John Redwood MP as well to ask him some serious questions, because he's in there. What's going on?
And these Tory councils that are blocking refugee camps. So the government are trying to stop the boats out, get the people out of hotels. You've got Braintree Council now, a Tory council, going to court today to try to stop it.
Well,
not in our backyard.
Well, also, let's not forget James Cleverly is...
Foreign Secretary.
It's his constituency.
Local MP.
And he's also opposing it. So it's coming from within a cabinet.
There used to be something called collective cabinet responsibility.
Yeah.
So one of the most senior cabinet ministers breaching his own government policy because he doesn't want it in his backyard. Whose backyard then, Foreign Secretary?
Yeah, what a mess. And eco-warriors as well.
Oh, don't get me started.
You know, with the run-up to the marathon this weekend, there'll be so many people doing the last-minute training, winding down a bit, thinking, am I even going to be able to run this race when I've trained for a year for it? So, we're going to be talking about that as well.
OK, guys, thank you from 9:30. Stay with us, because there will be another handsome Irishman, Brian McFadden. I say that in all modesty. He'll be talking about heading out on tour with Boys Life. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us 4, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 9:22. What do you get when you add one member of Boyband Westlife with a member of Boyzone? Answer:
Boys Life. There you go. That's very clever, isn't it? Former Westlifer Brian McFadden, Boyzoner Keith Duffy, they're teaming up and they're hitting the road again for the Boys Life Old School Part 2. And there is Mr. Brian this morning, ready to talk to us. I just imagine, Brian, I look at you and I think, I bet you jumped out of bed with a spring in your step today. I bet you just love early mornings.
Do you know, I actually don't mind early mornings anymore. I've been awake since probably 5:30, 6 o'clock with the baby, so this is like afternoon for me. I think I was up before you today.
Aye, that's fair enough. And when you team up with Keith, right? Is it like work at all, or do you guys have a fair bit of fun?
I can't in any way say it feels like work. We've had 6 years now of just being on the road, playing golf, having a good time, and kind of making up for, we always talk about our biggest regret of our times in our old bands, when we were at the height of our career, that we didn't enjoy it enough, that we made it feel like work, and we'd go all around the world to these amazing countries and we wouldn't experience them, we just go, do our work, do the concert, back on the plane and leave. And we're taking everything in now. We're taking this because we feel like it's a second chance for us to do it again, and we're just making the absolute most of it and loving every second of it.
Now, Brian, you're not trying to tell us you didn't have a good time along the way. You were known...
He had a good time.
He was known as the bad boy of the boy bands.
I just don't remember.
He had a good time. He doesn't remember any of it.
There you go. But it's funny hearing you talking about having a little baby. I mean, you could argue in many ways you've kind of grown up, and lots of your audience has grown up with you. And I suppose when you're going out on this tour, there's a lot of nostalgia involved, isn't there? Because let's be honest, the guys and girls that come to see you, they want to hear the old material, don't they, more than the new, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we speak to the fans, and it's amazing that with every song that we do in the show, it will spark off a memory for somebody, whether it's somebody's wedding song or somebody else might say that was their favourite song when they were in school. And we're very lucky that we've obviously got so many hits between the two bands. I think between Boyzone and Westlife, we've over 20 #1 singles. So we've got plenty of material to sing. And that is the good thing, when people come to our show, different people have different favourite songs. So it does become a bit of a roller coaster of memories and emotions when we perform. But it's the same for us, we love it. We've been singing these songs for over 25 years and still love doing it.
How do you decide on those songs, Brian? I mean, I love covers. I mean, I'm a massive Elvis fan, and I love people who do cover versions of what the King sang. So you would then, it depends, each of you sing the other songs. You do everything together? Is that what you do on the show?
Yeah, well, I think when we started 6 years ago, we basically picked the songs that were probably the easiest to sing at the start until we got used to doing it. But now, we kind of changed we do about a 2-hour set in our tour. And every tour that we do, we kind of shake it up and we change the songs and bring in new songs and lose some songs. But as I said, that's the great thing about having such a big catalogue of songs, that we can constantly change it. Some people do like the new stuff as well. But generally, yes, people are screaming out for the old hits.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I can't believe it's 25 years. Makes me feel really old. I was there first time round. Stop it. And I'm there the second time round as well.
Why do you keep trying to pretend you're some young thing for?
I don't know. Am I older than you, Brian? How old are you these days?
You never ask a lady her age.
Come on.
I was 43 last week.
Oh, you see, I am younger.
What, by what, a week or something?
3 years. 3 years are going to take. Look, Ruby's gorgeous. We wish you all the very best with the second leg of your tour. Kicks off on the 4th of May.
And we're talking about in Manchester today, but he's going to be with Keith Duffy in Leicester and Hull and Cambridge, Warrington, Reading, Croydon, Plymouth, Liverpool, Bath, Northampton, Cardiff and Tunbridge Wells, starting, as Isabel says, on May the 4th. God bless you, mate. Good talking to you.
Brian.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, we'll also say God bless you and thank you and bye-bye to you this morning. Thank you for your company throughout the programme. We're going to be back tomorrow from
6 o'clock, but up next it's Bev and Andrew with To The Point.
Morning, it's Andrew and Bev here with To The Point. Lots to talk about. Those Extinction Rebellion protesters, not bad.
No, I'm thinking about today, London Marathon runners. We're going to be competing this weekend, but Extinction Rebellion and the Just Stop Oil Eco Warriors want us to think about them and what they are up
Selfish,
to.
senseless and stupid, and the government will do very little about it. Also, the government are trying to move illegal migrants out of hotels, and who's stopping them?
Tory MPs in their constituencies. Essex particularly is taking the government to court to say we don't want them in our backyard. We're going to be getting to grips with that and a lot more this morning. Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg.